cool. Hello, we are live. Speak, brother. Brother, speak. No, you're gonna get us copyrighted. You're gonna get us copyrighted. This bitch. You know what? Honestly, I don't think Oda really gives a shit as long as you're not doing something like horrible with his shit. Yo ho ho ho. Yo ho ho ho. I remember you told me this. Yeah, I was about to say like Toei. We're here. Well, I will maybe another time. I have plenty of One Piece fics to share. I know. The One Piece? The one? Wait. Can you do the can you get much higher thingy? So high. Wait, actually, you know what? I actually have something that I can actually do to that for once. I can honor the sound bite. Oh gosh. Oh, I can honor the sound bite. What is the sound bite asking? Dumbass. Oh God. So, anyways, let's do a recap. Last time on Dragon Ball Z. It ends with a Z. Zuko and Iroh got isekai'd to the world of Rwby, in which Zuko is being a little bitch. I mean, that's kind of mean. I feel like if I lost everything and was suddenly in a random ass world, I'd be a little upsetty too. Honestly, it kind of depends. Like, if I got isekai'd into the Pokemon world, I'd be like ecstatic. Yeah, exactly. So he's dealing with that. He is a team member of Team Rwby because they're like, screw it, we're gonna make a team of 5 people and name the Team Rwbys. So now you have this teenage boy having to share a dorm with 4 teenage girls, and he's just off in the corner with his little hammock bed. It does make sense. It totally makes like, do you think that they've ever actually had like an uneven amount of students in the history of like Beacon? Like they had to have had. They just fail somebody just so that they can have an even number, or they just bump somebody up so they can have an even number. That's fair. That's very fair. Come at me, bro. That's entirely possible, I think. I want her instead. You know, I have a theory that John like was able like I still feel like even though he like forged it, like something should have like flared up like as a warning. I feel like Ozpin probably knew his grandfather, the one that fought in the war. They just mentioned that John's grandfather fought in the war. They don't mention like if he knew anybody. Yeah. Good Witch says it's sus, not Ozpin. She basically says like he is not ready for this level of training. I don't know what the hell his transcripts say, but no. Yeah. One thing I do find really funny about these fanfics is that on more than one occasion, I've seen them say, screw John, we're not making him the team leader in this fic. I've seen it on like three occasions now. It's very funny. They always make Pyrrha the leader instead, and I'm like, that's very funny. I mean, like, I personally don't really like John as a character that much. But, like, that's just me. Yeah, that is a claim. I would love to hear your points on this, but in any case, he does have the most development. I'll give you that. Dude, so here's the thing about Rwby with Volume 9 is that she has good development in Volume 9, but as a main character, it shouldn't have taken 9 seasons for her to get development. Like, I appreciate the development she gets, but it should not have taken that long. Yeah. I mean, you could develop badly. Yep. It should have been different. Spiky Shield. Pokemon. They probably decided to change it when they had like plot ideas. But in any case, let's actually get to the fic. Fan fiction. God, there's one fan fiction like I would love to do in this series called The Lion-Hearted, and I genuinely think it's the best Rwby crossover fanfic out there because it is like so well written. And you want the crazy thing is it's written in second person. You know like what second person is, right? Yeah, it's like you know? So it's like really interestingly written. And I'll share what the crossover is with another day, but if like I feel like if you know a lot of fandom stuff, the fact that I said second person should be raising alarm bells. Let's do this. Oh. I mean, it's not like a romance thing. It's not. It's not. Um, it isn't a romance thing, like although like most like ex readers are written with second person. No, it's just written in second person and like it's so weird. Anyways, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Okay. Chapter 8. I think he's dying, y'all. Chat, I think he's dying. No, I'm the one who was dying right before reading this. I didn't think I was going to be able to read for a second. I like got like some super spicy food on accident. literally ran to the kitchen to get milk. I need the milk! Okay. Keep getting distracted. Chapter 8, Purpose. Zuko stared at the textbook in front of him in hatred. I know, right? Okay, so the faunists are the weird animal human things, and they have extra body parts that do stuff? Or was it instead of normal parts? Do they still use their normal ears if they have animal ones? And what kind of animal is a puma? Sounds fake. They also have night vision, or what the heck is that? Vision at night? How does that even work? That's, oh right, animal thing. This is the part where you lose. Zuko glanced up from his book to momentarily watch the fight at the front of the classroom, if you could call it that. It was about as one-sided as when the Water Tribe boy had charged him at the South Pole. He felt a small, smug satisfaction at the memory of knocking the kid away. It had been brave of the boy to try him. Yeah, it's Zuko thinking about Sokka. It's Zuko thinking about... Yeah, I knew what you were thinking. But you get him confuzzled. Totally. Oh god. You dumbass! It'd been brave of the boy to try and stop him. Water tribe barbarian or not, he certainly didn't lack guts. Only brains. Zuko watched with disinterest as the blonde boy on stage went down. He wasn't exactly surprised. He'd been losing from the start, and the kid had barely been standing after a few hits, let alone been able to make a comeback. It's John getting his ass wrecked. Zuko watched in anger as the blonde's opponent raised his mace, ready to finish him off. He was about to stand up and step in when the teacher stopped him. Carden, that's enough! The boy relented and walked away, resting his mace on the shoulder. Yeah, he's a little bitch. If that had been me, I would have been built different. The boy relented and walked away, resting his mace on his shoulder. Students, as you can see, Mr. Ark's aura has now dropped into the red. In a tournament-style duel, this would indicate that John is no longer fit for battle, and that the official may call the match. Zuko glanced to his aura notes again. Is that the one that gives them magical powers? No, that's Semblance, right? Or was that soul thing, which might as well be magic? Zuko grit his teeth. Honestly. I mean, like, it doesn't fall into, like, bending. Like, not every kind of thing is going to be, like, bending. Yeah, you know what? That's fair. That's fair. Zuko grit his teeth. Excellent. Zuko grit his teeth just like he had when he'd first learned about it. A world with no benders should have meant he didn't have to worry about any threats. Instead, he'd apparently found himself surrounded by a whole world of people who outclassed him in multiple ways. Each person's aura meant that they could take more punishment, punch harder. They could outclass Zuko in any fight if he let them. He certainly wasn't weak. Even in this new world, there weren't many people who could shatter steel chains in a single kick. But that was the problem. Zuko could only do that because of his firebending training, which was effectively a semblance power. He could use his bending to even the field with any one of his team in a fight, but if Rwby used her super speed, Blake her illusion things, or Weiss in her magical floating symbols, then he would be toast. Heck, he hadn't even seen what Yang could do, but he just knew it would be something bad. Oh god. Zuko really said square up to them hoes! No, don't be mean to... Those are your teammates, Zuko! Those are your teammates, you bitch! Oh, that's very funny, the timing. That's actually really funny. But even with all that said, even if he had his bending back, which he didn't, a single dust bullet would kill him. Catch an arrow as it came towards him? Easy. He'd done that 100 times before. He'd done it recently with that rough rhino archer just before he and his uncle had been kidnapped. Catch a bullet traveling so fast he could barely see it? No. He can do it. He's built different. I feel like that would still hurt from the momentum. Mr. Ark, it's been weeks now. Please try to refer to your scroll during combat. Gauging your aura will help decide when it's appropriate to attack or when it's better to move to a more defensive strategy. We wouldn't want you to be gobbled up by a Beowulf, would we? Speak for yourself. Carden lazily stepped off the stage, the arrogant smirk feeling right at home on his face. Remember, everyone, the Vital Festival is only a few months away. It won't be long before students from other kingdoms start arriving in Vale, so keep practicing. Those who choose to compete in the combat tournament will be representing all of Vale. You aura-less bitch. Oh, no aura? Shit, wait. That's so... Shut up. The bell rang and the students stood up to leave. No! The bell rang and the students stood up to leave. Zuko didn't move, however, still thinking through his options. Maybe I could make a fire shield? I lived through my ship blowing up because of it. No, I'd still be a mess afterwards. I can't afford to take the chance that it won't block everything. Ahem? Zuko blinked and looked up at the teacher who stood over him. Yes, Miss Goodwitch? Class has finished, Mr. Lee. You can leave now. She looked over. I love that, like, that was the best thing that Iroh could come up with because, like, everyone, there's like a million Lees. She looked over towards his open textbook. Unless you'd rather stay and read up on elementary schoolwork. Zuko scowled. My education missed some things. So I've been told. She matched his glare with one of her own. Mr. Lee, I've been excluding you from combat practice because you have failed to demonstrate any aura control. If you cannot participate in the classes which your scholarship requires you to complete, then I may suggest that you rethink your attendance at this school. Zuko growled and slammed his textbook shut. I'll catch up. He stood up from his seat and stomped out of the classroom, seething with embarrassment and rage. Stupid teacher. Who does she think she's talking to? I'm royalty. The son of the Fire Lord, the most powerful person on the planet, and she thinks she can treat me like some child? Zuko cursed her name all the way to the cafeteria. Arrogant cow. What kind of teacher mocks somebody just because they don't have an aura? Or because they're struggling over work that didn't even exist a few weeks ago? I'd like to see her insult me once I get my bending back. I'll burn that stupid cape of hers and... Hello, Zuko! Zuko stopped out of his inner ramblings and looked up at the person serving him food. Hello, Uncle. We're having fish, vegetables, and potatoes today. Though I did manage to convince the chef to let me make them myself, so they're much closer to the fireflakes from home that you like so much. Zuko grunted as his uncle laid the food on his tray. He still didn't like that his uncle had been reduced to some chef servant, but at least he seemed somewhat happy doing it, especially when he spoke again. I even managed to order a few extra ingredients. Soon I'll be able to make jasmine tea again. I couldn't find any ginseng, unfortunately, but it's something. Man can only go so long without tea, after all. Iroh, priority 1, make sure Zuko's okay. Iroh, priority 2, get some fucking tea! That man is so relaxed, it's not impossible. Zuko, over here! He looked back to see Rwby waving at him from the far end of the hall. The rest of his team, and Team Juniper, all sat with them. Thanks for the food, Uncle. Enjoy, Zuko. Say hi to your team for me. He left and began making his way towards his team. He was still angry, but at least seeing his uncle helped him calm down somewhat. Hey, we saved you a seat! Rwby moved over slightly from the 2 seats she'd been occupying. Zuko muttered a small thanks and sat down. The rest of his team said nothing as they were all listening to the orange-haired girl from Juniper telling a story. So there we were, in the middle of the night. It was day, her male companion corrected her, even as she continued as if she never heard him speak. We were surrounded by Ursai. They were Beowulfs. Dozens of them. 2 of them. But they were no match. And in the end, Ren and I took them down and made a boatload of Lean selling Ursa skin rugs. She's been having this reoccurring dream for nearly a month now. Zuko had barely listened to them. Ren may not have been so bad, but the pink one was so peppy and happy that he could barely stand to hear her. She reminded him far too much of a particular airbender. As they She's too happy. It had to be Aang. As they turned their attention to the blonde boy who'd just been beaten in the class before, Zuko's eyes caught something. The one who'd been his opponent, and 3 others who were most likely his teammates, had begun to block the path of some Faunus girl. The boys surrounded her and began to mock and prod her. He'd seen it 1,000 times before, and he didn't need a book to tell him discrimination when he saw it. Both before and after his banishment, Zuko had been appalled by the wanton segregation of benders and non-benders in the military, with only firebenders receiving the proper armor and equipment they deserved. The rest, treated like fodder, like they were lesser people, no matter that they still fought and bled for their nation with as much honor as anyone else. Zuko turned to look at... Yeah? We never see any We never see any non-firebenders, or at least explicitly stated, in the army that we see directly. Yeah, I mean, like, it makes sense. I believe in the comics, they outwardly state that, the Fire Nation was the most discriminatory against non-benders. Which, at that time makes sense, yeah. Fun fact, the Fire Nation was also super homophobic under Sozin. That's canon. I know, right? I think that's why he was super homophobic. He's like, if I can't have him, nobody else can be gay. Yeah. And then, like, the air nomads were the most, like, okay with it. Which, also makes sense because the air nomads were segregated by their gender. Do, do, do. Yeah, if you're only going to be with, like, guys, or if you're only going to be with girls as a girl, like, yeah, stuff's going to happen. Zuko turned to look at Rwby and clenched his fists when she saw it, and looked away. His team saw the boys too, as did the other team who were sitting with them. Just like Rwby, they looked away at disgust. The red-headed girl turned her attention back to the blonde. John, Carden's been picking on you since the first week of school. Who? Cardinal Winchester? Nah, he just likes to mess around. Practical jokes. He's a bully. It was Rwby that time, casting an annoyed glance over at the boy in question. Oh, please, name one time he's bullied me. Zuko ignored them as they recounted all the times John had been bullied. So what, that's it? They're just gonna sit there? So much for wanting to help people, Rwby. I'd have thought you of all people wouldn't just sit back and let it happen. Carden? No, he's thinking it. Sorry, I need to, like, specify this. Carden... Like, just Zuko just, like, outright, went at her? No. Carden began to tug on the Faunus bunny's ears as he and his team laughed. Atrocious. I can't stand people like... Zuko? Pyrrha watched in surprise as a scarred teenage boy abruptly stood up from his seat and began marching over to Carden. Yang took notice quickly, cocking an eyebrow in confusion. What's he doing? Getting himself into trouble? What does he think he's doing? Weiss began to desperately look around for a teacher. They could tell. What they should have done. Honestly, when I watched Rwby, this was a complaint of mine that, like, they just let it happen. Yeah. Well, I can understand Blake more, actually, because she was Faunus. Like, she especially didn't want to get, like, revealed in any way. Yeah. Just tied up ears. Zuko, come back! What are you doing? Zuko didn't hear them, his anger blocking out all save for the four men before him. Hey! Carden stopped in surprise, his hand still gripped tightly on the girl's ears. Let the girl go. Carden laughed, even as he let go of her ears. His teammates stepped up behind him, trying their best to look intimidating. And just who are you? Trying to tell us what to do? Doesn't matter who I am, but I know who you are. You're not huntsmen. You're bullies. Cowards. Abusing anyone who won't stand up to you, and messing with a girl whose life is hard enough as it is. Carden growled and stepped forward until he was right in front of them. He might have been taller than Zuko, but he wasn't intimidated in the slightest. So what, you and your team want to take us on? You're darn right we will! Rwby, Yang, Blake, and Weiss all formed up behind him confidently. No. Huh? They didn't want to step in before, they won't now. I'll take you all on. Carden smirked viciously while his own team looked stunned. Zuko? Shut up, Rwby. Hey! Mm-hmm. That is incredibly fair. The one thing I would give them over him is just that the aura would keep them in the fight longer, whereas he could easily get exhausted. I don't remember how this goes. Karnan brought their attention back to him as he laughed. You heard him, ladies. Nobody interfere. He and Zuko continued their stare down at one another, tension filling the room. Karnan cracked his knuckles and puffed up his chest, while the firebender merely waited for him to make his move. The other students in the room began to crowd around and chant, eager to see a fight outside the classroom. That's true. Is a fight really all that special when you go to a fighting school? And like there's nothing against like fighting somebody you have a personal beef with in the classroom. Is it just the fact that like these kids are like bloodthirsty or what? Yeah, and then like do it in class. Yeah, honestly. I remember that. Carden wheeled back to punch, but found himself flung backwards into the arms of his teammates. Zuko had barely moved to shove him, and returned quickly to his original standing position. Carden growled and charged at him again, his fist already raised to strike. With just the slightest of steps, Zuko dodged the blow and grabbed Carden by the head, flinging him around before throwing him face first into one of the benches. It would have knocked out a normal person, but thanks to his aura, Carden was still conscious. It very pissed off. He turned to his team in anger. The hell are you idiots doing just standing there? You're in the fight too, remember? They hesitated for a moment, before they and Carden all charged in towards him. Zuko ducked and sidestepped as punches began to rain towards him. More people didn't exactly change the balance much when they were all restricted by the benches around them. When one of them stepped too far forward or overextended themselves in an attack, Zuko would step around them and send them crashing back down to the floor. His attackers, however, just wouldn't stay down. As their auras allowed them to simply take the beating Zuko was giving them. Just the fucking Iron Man! It was only a matter of time before one of them got lucky. Carden was the first, landing a painful punch across Zuko's chin, staggering him backwards. He recovered and made Carden pay for it with a flurry of painful blows. But he'd made an opening regardless, and soon more and more hits were landing on him. Zuko blocked blow after blow, dodging and weaving between his opponents until Carden caught him staggered and kicked him full force in the chest. Zuko went down and hit the floor. Hard. Yeah. I don't know, he's in the back of the kitchen. It's just like, oh, it's okay, it's just boys being boys. When Zuko didn't move, Carton laughed, raising his fists in victory. Zuko! Despite whatever he may have said, Rwby was still worried when she saw her teammate fall over. It was an all too familiar feeling for Zuko, being beaten by so many who were better than him. Azula, the Avatar, against those he needed to fight, he was always so weak. His hands twitched as a smug Carton began to tower over him. Remember this, Zuko. No matter how things seem to change, never forget who you are. Who was he? A banished prince? A failure not in one world but two? No. I am Zuko, and I am done being weak. Zuko's legs whirled through the air, unleashing an inferno of flames that smashed into the bullies around him. One by one, they smashed into the benches, all save for Carton being knocked out. Carton watched in fear as Zuko rose to his feet, fire billowing around him as he seethed with rage. Without hesitation, Zuko ran towards him, sending blast after blast into him. There was just the slightest pause in his barrages as he charged up his attack, unleashing a wave of fire that blasted Carton off his feet and into the wall of the far end of the cafeteria. His fight won, Zuko took a deep breath and extinguished the flames around him. This time will be different. I won't fight for myself, but I will use the strength to help others. Just what do you think you're doing, young man? And that's the end of chapter 8. He kicked their ass. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I remember now, he kicked their ass. He found his fire again by wanting to help others. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Let him go burn, baby, burn. You know, I mean, to be fair, he's younger than them, actually. I just remember that. He's a lot more mature. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, but I just remembered that, like, Beacon age is 17 and Zuko's 16. Huh, I had forgotten that. He's only barely older than Rwby. Ruby's 15. Or she's 15 in the first volume because she's 2 years younger. Yep, so right now in volume 9, she's 17 while everyone else is 19. Or at least that's our rough guesstimate because we don't know exactly how long the time skip was. We don't have an exact amount. They just said it was multiple months, and that could mean a year. Could mean 2 years. Could mean a week. No, not a week. Could mean 1 month. We don't know. It's not 2 years, but then you have to remember they spent a lot of time traveling too, and they spent a long time in Atlas. Yeah. I don't think so. Well, I don't remember the exact wording they used, but I do know like several seasons passed. So like I believe it's spring or summer when Ruby goes back home after the fall of Beacon, and it's winter by the time she leaves on her journey. And it's like spring or summer again by the time that we catch up to them in volume 4. So I think your guesstimate of 6 months is probably right. Rubies. Chapter 9. Punishment. Of all the students I've seen over the years, you have been by far the most difficult. Zuko listened disinterestedly as Glinda paced around the room. Ozpin was sat opposite him, studying the boy silently. You failed nearly all of your homework assignments. You speak back to everyone, and now you're fighting with other students in the lunchroom? Zuko. Hell yeah! Zuko said nothing, knowing that saying anything would merely anger her anymore. Having usually been the one who was mad at her, he knew that sometimes it was just better to let them vent. You don't cooperate with your team, you barely even speaking to them, and on top of it all, you insulted your team leader just an hour ago. She stopped, deserved, took a deep breath, and calmed herself. She stood by Osmond's side as she waited for the young man to speak. He kept his silence, biting back the numerous snarky responses he wanted to yell at her. Clearly, Glinda wasn't pleased as she opened her mouth to speak again before being interrupted by Ozpin. I think it would be best if I spoke to Zuko in private, Glinda. Thank you for bringing him to me. Please double check that all of the fires are out. The last thing we need is the... the last thing we need is the academy burning down. Oops. She looked like she wanted to protest, but thought better of it. Giving a nod of understanding, she left his office, and soon the Bender and the Professor were left in silence, save for the ever-present sound of the clock tower gears moving around them. Royalty not used to being talked down to? Zuko growled. I stand by what I did. And do you really understand what you've just done? Had those boys not activated their auras in time, you would have severely injured them. As it stands, Mr. Winchester is still down in the medical bay after you blew him into the wall. What was I supposed to do? Just let someone be turned into a punching bag? Mr. Winchester's activities were certainly not violent, but they would have been. Sooner or later, he would have gone further because no one was doing anything to stop him. And you believe the person to stop him was you? It should have been her team, but they weren't around, so somebody had to do something. Like, set the cafeteria on fire. Or do you think you should have gotten a teacher instead? You're training us to fight monsters and stop bad guys. Training! But you are not yet trained. The damage that you did to those boys is precisely why you notify a teacher of the situation and let them handle it. I went Wobot? Let me check. Oh, I was typing stuff and like... It's cause all of my reactions are tied to different... And when I typed YouTube, I activated them. I think I'm probably gonna move them there. It's cause like I had them to the number pad, but it got really confusing. Okay, so I didn't like robot out on YouTube. I think it was just Discord being a Discord. What was the last thing you heard? Okay. Let me look. Okay. I'm not stupid. I know how... I'm not stupid. I know how dangerous firebending is. Ozpin glanced at the boy's burnt left eye. Clearly. Dun dun dun. Damn, Ozpin! Zuko's eyes shot open in anger and he stood up from his seat. He turned and began to stomp towards the elevator. I didn't say you could leave, Zuko. We are by no means finished. He stopped and whirled around on the headmaster, pointing an accusatory finger at him. Why should I stay and listen to you? Because if you don't, then you and your uncle may find yourself on the street. Zuko went silent. His lip curled into a snarl, but he said nothing, forcing himself to calm down before he set fire to the room. After a short moment, he walked back to his seat and sat down. Ozpin himself took a brief moment to calm down. It wasn't often he found himself angry at a student, but Zuko was very agitating. I put a lot of favors and broke a great many more rules to let you come here, Zuko. However, if you think that I will allow you to do whatever you feel like because of that, then you're sorely mistaken. Zuko's head sank as he continued to sit in silence. I've allowed you leniency because of your situation, but that... Why? You don't believe a single word about my past. No, I don't. But I believe that you do. Then why bother? I'm clearly not worth the trouble. Because I agree. I do personally agree with that. I do agree with that, but I also feel like Ozpin's like, I've been around so long, like, I would have known about this shit. He's seen crazy ass shit, like, why wouldn't this be possible? I think it's like an Occam's razor situation. Like in this world, it would make more sense for somebody to just have a semblance. Like you're gonna listen for horses, not zebras. That kind of thing. And then like it's gonna take more evidence, I think, for him to be like, okay, maybe I was wrong. Yeah. Cause like even if he has seen this shit, like crazy shit, he probably realizes it's like a once in a century kind of thing. And he's like, maybe it's not time. We just dealt with Team Stark and their bullshit. It should be fine. There shouldn't be any life changing events anytime soon. Yeah, Salem. Yeah, but you have to remember, like the Great War, like the last time, like there was like a huge interaction, like that was like 100 years ago. And I'd also be like, ah, I feel like something should be coming, but maybe it's not this. My thought process would be the second that he does believe them, I wonder if he'd start wondering if Salem was involved with that. Like, yeah, he's paranoid. Do, do, do. You're fine. Because I stand by what I told you on the day you arrived. You have potential, Zuko. Not just for strength, but to become a better person as well. You are arrogant, rash, and short-tempered. But you're also good. You stepped in to help Miss Scarlatina because you saw a person in trouble. Not a chance for a fight, and not a faunus who needed to be saved. I've seen you in your classes too. Combat classes you ignore unless it's something vital, and instead you focus on your academics. As much of a friend of mine as he is, you were also one of the few students to fully listen to Professor Port's classes. When relevant, at least. Zuko almost smirked. The point is, you're not a bad man, Zuko. Simply misguided. Tell me, what's really the issue? I hate this place. Beacon? No, not the school. The everything. Ozpin watched curiously as he stood up from his seat and began to pace around the room. Everything I see is different. It's also new. You know, it took me a half an hour to get out of a closet the other day because I couldn't figure out how to use the door? I didn't even have a time dial on the sun to tell me that. I just saw it on a clock. There's all this new technology that stops me every time I'm trying to do something. It may make your life easier, but mine's become hell. The animals are different. There's two species of people. A bear? Just a bear? Like everything is just so confusing. Like imagine old people nowadays struggling with a tablet. Now imagine you get introduced to all of that at once. The animals are different. There's two species of people, and every night I can see the body of the moon spirit strewn across the sky. There's no great spirit I can pray to for guidance, no goal that I'm supposed to be working towards. Every day I wake up and I just do what I can to make sense of the world. Oh, and the combat part of my scholarship? I don't know what glowing recommendation this crow guy gave you, but I've never felt so vulnerable in my life. I could let loose a Komodo Rhino on any one of these kids, and if they were really unlucky, they might get a bruise. Each and every one of them has some kind of weapon that would kill me in one hit, unless I took them out first. I don't have any aura to protect me from the bullet like they do. Funny, you don't look like a Grim. Zuko looked at him confused. Didn't reach that part of your studies yet. Every being that has a soul has an aura. The only creatures that don't are the Grim. I'd hardly call you soulless. Well, I'm not exactly from here, am I? Ozpin didn't answer. Not that he should have. They were trapped in an impasse as far as that small topic was concerned. Zuko sighed and retook his seat. So... yeah. I also understand too, like I got you. Like in this world, like census is kind of hard to do, so I can understand like a village being so isolated to an extent that they wouldn't show up in like records. Like how many villages do we see get fucked up? That's true. That's very true. But like I also wonder like how do you keep an accurate census in a world like this? Like that's something like yeah, honestly that's fair. That's fair, but like I don't know how like I don't know, I just something I always found interesting. Like we can guesstimate that Ruby also has a much smaller world population too. And you can only expand so much. So like my personal guesstimate was always like maybe like 5 million people in total. Like that's a tiny amount, but like given like how little area they have access to and given like even the towns, like obviously the towns are empty because they don't want to animate extras, but like I don't know, it's just something I always wondered. I saw somebody guesstimate like 1 million based on the densities we have seen, but that feels too low. I don't know, just interesting world building. Yeah, let's stop with the math. Yeah. So what's gonna happen to me? Are you gonna kick me out? That would be rather wasteful. Kids will be kids, and this is hardly the first time a student has made a mistake. Regardless, you will be punished suitably. Given that I was Team Cardinal and they will be unable to focus on their studies until they are healed, it seems only fair that you help them with their studies. Any and all homework assignments they receive this week will be completed by you, starting with those given today. What? You know how bad I've been struggling. How could I possibly do that? You're very determined, Zuko. I'm sure you'll find a way. Honestly, they'll they will be dropped off at your dorm today. Until then, I suggest you take that time to apologize to your team. Like them or not, they will be with you for years to come. It's in your best interest to make as many friends as you can. Zuko looked away in shame. He hadn't really meant what he said to Ruby. It was just, that will be all, Zuko. You may leave. Zuko stood and headed towards the elevator. And please send your uncle in after you. He's waiting on the floor below. Zuko froze, then continued a feeling of shame up it. They're gonna be like, bitch, what'd you do to my nephew? Also fair. That's also fair. He's gonna hear Zuko got into a fight. Why did you burn down the cafeteria? I feel like it'd be a mix of like proud and angry. Like, okay, great, you got your fire back. This is still a problem. Yeah, yeah. The four ladies of Team Rubies sat in silence at their dorm. After Glinda had come in and taken Zuko off to see Ozpin, they hadn't really known what to do. So they said their goodbyes and Team Juniper and headed off to their dorm to study, except they hadn't really. Oops. They'd gotten their books out, their notes, made themselves comfortable in their beds, and so what's gonna happen to him? Ruby was the first to speak, even if she kept her head low in shyness. I don't know, Ruby. Don't exactly care much. Yang was still angry over Zuko's outburst to her sister. But I mean, was he right? Right about what? That we weren't doing anything? Oh, please, Zuko didn't know what he was doing. Weiss couldn't hold her tongue any longer. He knew exactly what he was doing. If he had any sense, then he would have gotten to get a teacher. If we did something like he wanted us to do, then we'd all be in as much trouble as him. And what would a teacher do? Blake looked up from her book as she spoke. She still sounded disinterested regardless of what she asked. They would have stopped him and punished him appropriately. What kind of question is that? Would they? Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? She was a faunus, and this is a combat school. So what? We're still students. The teachers would know better than any of us what should be done. And besides, faunus discrimination isn't that bad. Racism! Racism! It's not that bad. Oh, Weiss, I remember racist Weiss. Blake narrowed her eyes but held her tongue begrudgingly. The last thing she needed was an argument, no matter how much a certain spoiled heiress needed a lesson in reality. Yang was the next one to speak up again, casting a glance over to the faunus in hiding. It doesn't matter what he did, it's how. He set fire to the cafeteria! He said he was a firebender. He also said he'd lost it, Rwby. I guess he lied. The girls were silent again, each one deep in thought before they were interrupted as the door opened. Zuko took a few steps inside before he froze under their gazes at him. Some angry, some disappointed, others confused. Hi. What do you... Zuko here. What do you want? Come to burn down our room too? Zuko visibly flinched at Weiss's accusation, but he didn't look angry, just ashamed. Yeah, sorry about that. I've been having a tough time since I came to Beacon, and I just kind of... His apology was terrible, and none of his team looked ready to accept it. It's just... Hello! We go over fan fictions that I want to update. That I want them to update, and this is how I think I can do it. But also, I feel like fanfiction has a bad rep, and I want to show off some good ones. You're not wrong! You're not wrong, but, like, some of them is really good, and I feel sad that, like, it doesn't get as much appreciation as fan art does, you know? Because it takes a lot of work, too. Yeah, they definitely both take a lot of work. Looks at my leg, looks into the void. This is a good one. That's fair. I like a mix. He came up with a really good idea. Jesus Christmas Christ, what was that? Like a ton of stuff just fell from my bookshelf. I think it was the mouse. Okay, I'm gonna go continue. I just, like, that scared the shit out of me. Oh my god. Okay, here we go. It's just, I had a pretty rough childhood, and just before I came to Beacon, I lost everything. And I didn't really know who I was or what I was doing anymore, and I've been struggling ever since. I know that it doesn't excuse what I did, but I wasn't thinking about the consequences or about what I said. He looked over to Rwby, who was looking back at him in a way he couldn't quite figure out. I didn't mean what I said if it hurt you, and I shouldn't have handled it how I did. It only made things worse. I should have just gotten a teacher. Right you are, Mr. Lee. Zuko turned around to see Glinda stood in the doorway with a massive pile of papers in her hand. Here's Team Cardinal's work. Make sure you hand in all their assignments on time and with passing grades. She dumped the stack of work in his hands. Yes, Miss Goodwitch. And make sure you don't neglect your own work either. You can't afford to fail any more of your assignments. Yes. Linda left after that, leaving Zuko to sigh in resignation and collect his books and pens. He left and headed off to the library without another word, knowing that if he didn't get started soon, he would not finish it on time. The room was silent for a while before Yang spoke up. Oh! Thank you! I really appreciate the subscribble. Thank you. The room was silent for a while before Yang spoke up. Well, that happened. Who'd have thought Zuko would ever apologize? Easy Weiss, it's not like we really know him, or know anything about him, really. That's the point. In the weeks that we've been a team, he's hardly ever spoken to any of us. Rwby cut in nervously. Well, I mean, that's not entirely true. Rwby awkwardly tapped her fingers together as the team turned to face her in surprise. Well, we've been, kind of been getting along in some of our classes when it's just us. I mean, he doesn't talk much, but he's nicer, you He's not as much of a jerk. Slightly. Really? Yang cupped her chin and thought, well, that's good, I guess. What? I thought you were angry at him for being mean to your sister. I was, but he said sorry, and he admitted he made a mistake. Besides, you've said worse before. I have not. You Miss Race. I was. You kinda have, Rwby awkwardly interjected. What? Well, whatever. And he apologized for not thinking, so I don't know what you're still moody about. Blake didn't exactly look like she was smirking, but Weiss could practically hear it in her voice. Ugh. Okay, fine, he's forgiven. Now what do we do? There was a knock at the door and Rwby opened it to reveal Iroh stood awkwardly outside. Oh, hello, I was looking for my nephew. Is he... He left to do some homework. Ah, I better leave him to that then. None of us can do an Iroh voice without sounding bad, okay? None of us can do it. He turned to leave, but Rwby grabbed him by the shoulder. Mr. Lee? Before he left, Zuko was saying sorry for starting the fight. Iroh's eyebrows raised in surprise. Well, I was wondering, what's, Zuko's, problem? Iroh smiled mischievously, remembering the phrase he'd heard so many other students using. He's picking up on the kids' lingo. How do you do, fellow kids? He has had a very difficult childhood, and it's forced him to not be as kind as he once was. Yeah, he mentioned that. What does that really mean, though? Iroh watched as the four girls all looked at him with interest. He sighed, having... He sighed, having hoped he'd never have to tell the story again. It's probably best that Zuko tells you himself when he's ready. But you should know that because he has had to become so thick-skinned, he's had to reject any sign of friendship he has offered. However, my nephew is not one to apologize lightly, and if he has, then I believe that extending an arm of friendship to him now may be your best chance. The girls all looked towards each other, silently asking their question as Iroh took his leave. The elderly firebender had been feeling very down indeed after his talk with Ozpin, but he hoped just maybe there could be something good gained from everything that had happened. Okay, so the Faunus War hit a turning point during the Battle of something, because the Faunus could see in the night, and then they stormed the castle as a manifestation of their soul. What? I know, right? Zuko looked over what he had just written, and then slammed his fist onto the table in anger. He'd been so tired, he'd moved on to an entirely different textbook. He let his head bang on the table in embarrassment. The sun may have just set, but he was already mentally exhausted. It didn't change the fact that he was still monstrously behind on his workload. I'm never going to get this done. Not alone, you're not. He sat up straight, ignoring the sheet of paper which had stuck itself to the side of his face. Rwby stepped into view from behind him, grabbing one of the books of the pile by his side. Yang, Weiss, and Blake all followed her lead and grabbed one themselves. Since we're your team, it wouldn't be fair to let you do it all on your own. Because you're getting Mandela'd. You're getting Mandela'd. It's a trope that's been done before, though, so you may have seen it in something else and just combining them. I am too. I am too, don't worry. That's why I know I got Mandela, because when I first read this, I googled it. That's why I'm like, I'm with you. I had the same reaction. Since we're your team, it wouldn't be fair to let you do it all on your own. Zuko was speechless as each one of his teammates opened the book and began to write down answers. Nobody's ever helped me. Nobody but Uncle. Thank you. All of you. And that was chapter 9. Fight was last chapter. It's nice. I think it's sweet. Yeah, chapter 9. We started this a couple weeks ago. I died. I died and I took my Streamlabs down with me. But yeah, I think it's a sweet chapter. Like, I did also expect Iroh to go in there and be like, hey, yeah, he got screwed up by his dad. Yeah. Yeah. Like, aw, damn, here we go again. Because it's also traumatic for him to have seen, like, his brother, like, scar his nephew so bad. So yeah, I also don't blame him. Alright, chapter 11. Or, excuse me. Where did I get chapter 11? Chapter 10, Jaundice. John, why are you like this? Brother, I know where you live. Is this the entire cast of Avatar in this, or just certain characters, or is it big mix match? So only Iroh and Zuko got sent to the Rwby world. Basically, like, something changed in the path of destiny on accident in the Avatar world, and Zuko would have essentially died had he stayed. So he got yeeted over to the Rwby world to maybe find a new purpose. So it's just them, or at least so far. Well, I don't know. Like, I am 2 chapters behind, so I don't know if they changed that. Okay. Well, this is chapter 10, Jaundice, and I believe that is a one-to-one name with an actual Rwby episode. Carden what the hell is Oak Heavens? What? Carden fumed as he walked down the hallway towards his room. He scratched at the cast on his arm, incessantly in frustration. Walking around school wearing the thing was humiliating enough, but why did it have to itch so badly? He clenched his good fist in anger. It was all that stupid Zuko's fault. If he'd minded his own business, then he wouldn't be like this. And all because he got that lucky shot, too. I swear the next time I see him, I'll make sure he regrets thinking he could stand up to me. To Beacon, that speaks volumes of what you're capable of. Huh? Carden thought, snuck against the wall until he reached the window, poking his head until he could just about make out 2 figures of Pyrrha and John standing out on the balcony. For whatever reason, John looked very upset. You're wrong. I don't belong here. That's a terrible thing to say. Of course you do. John whirled on Pyrrha, looking angry and ashamed. No, I don't. I wasn't really accepted into Beacon. Carden raised an eyebrow in confusion. Sure, he'd never thought John deserved to come to Beacon, being the little pipsqueak he was. What? What do you mean? I mean, I didn't go to combat school. I didn't pass any tests. I didn't even earn my spot at this academy. I lied. I got my hands on some fake transcripts, and I lied. A smirk grew on Carden's face as John continued his confession to Pyrrha. Oh, Johnny boy, we're gonna have some fun together. Dun. I think it's like a matter of like what's the word for it? Opportunity. Like you still find that shit out and you're like, "Ooh, I can have like a little buddy." I think it's just like an asshole having an opportunity to like screw with somebody because remember, he has been picking mostly on John this whole time. Oh, he definitely wants to screw over Zuko. And done. The last essay slapped onto the mountain of paperwork with the others. All around the table, Team Ruby's laid back on their seats with relief. Weiss stretched out her body and moaned in satisfaction, her arms and legs setting out small pops as she... That's something you can do when you are stretching! It's a weird choice of words, I'll admit. She reached out and grabbed the cup of coffee she'd made and took a sip, before promptly spitting it out in disgust. Yuck, it's freezing cold! How long ago did I make this? She slammed it down on the table in frustration, startling awake Rwby, who had just started to drift off into sleep. Wise raised an eyebrow as Zuko promptly picked up the cup and held it in his hands. It's almost sunrise, so probably a good few hours. Steam began to rise from the mug as he reheated it, then placed it back down in front of her. Well, that's convenient. But how do you know what time it is? You don't have a scroll. Despite Beacon having provided Zuko with a great many things to help him study, apparently a scroll was a luxury. So he'd been forced to wait as his uncle saved up using his measly pay in the kitchen. I can feel the sun as it moves. Rwby looked over at him in interest. Wow, so you can tell the time just by feeling it? I'm not that precise, but I can tell when the sun rises, or is about to. Rwby let out a single small "huh" before she laid her head down on the table to sleep. She just like smacked, like, okay, I'm down. I'm sleepy. Honestly, with all the work they did, it's like a week's worth for like 4 additional people. For the first time in a long time, Zuko smiled. There was just something about seeing the girls so exhausted after helping him that made him feel happy. No, not just some girls, his team? Zuko picked up the stack of papers they'd built and began to leave the library. So you managed to get it all done in time. Zuko nodded and accepted the cup of tea his uncle had outstretched for him, shifting the papers onto one hand. I had help. So I see. The slight smile Iroh had been carrying left his face as he turned serious. I know you're struggling here, Prince Zuko, but I think it's nice that you can make friends here. Zuko's smile fell. Not friends, Uncle. Teammates. I can't ever be friends with them. Oh? No! Bad Iroh, bad fake Iroh in Surge's head. Oh, music died. Let me go restart the music. The day the music died. Oh god. I can't be friends with them if they don't know who I am. He glanced back to his team who had started to talk and laugh amongst themselves. And how can I ever tell them who I am? They'd never believe me. Sadly, that is quite true. But I would suggest you try to be friends anyway. Zuko looked at him in surprise. Prince Zuko, we do not know what will happen to us, or what will come in the future. But I know that when the time comes, you will need some friends of your own. Zuko looked doubtful, finishing off his tea and handing it back to him. Give it time. Give them a chance. And when the time comes, tell them what you can. You never know. They just might believe you. Wouldn't that be worth all the work? Maybe, Uncle. Zuko's lips curled slightly, hope rising inside of himself. Maybe. Iroh left to work in the kitchen, leaving Zuko all alone when he arrived in Dr. Oobleck's classroom. Ah, Mr. Lee. I've been informed you have some homework to hand in. Here you go. He dropped the papers onto his desk, the always caffeinated doctor quickly scrutinizing his work. You have 2 different answers for this question. I didn't know which one was right, so I wrote them both. And this one's in a different color. My pen ran out. And the handwriting of this essay is different from this one. I'm ambidextrous. And switched hands? Oobleck scrutinized him, taking a disturbingly long break from speaking or drinking his coffee. Well, your weapons of choice are dual swords, so I suppose that's possible. Might I suggest next time asking your teammates to help you out? They are in fact allowed to do so. Zuko sighed as the doctor sped away. I honestly really like Oobleck. I think he's hilarious. Honestly, and he just like he's using that. That honestly is amazing. Well, I wonder what Zwei's actual semblance is. Like, he has a semblance, we know this. I'm not too sure what it does though. What? Zwei has an aura and a semblance. We just don't know what exactly his semblance does. Yeah, that's like, because you have to like remember what Oobleck's actual weapon is. It's like, what's the word for it? It's a cannon. His coffee cup turns into a cannon. That seems like such a bad idea. But I'm pretty sure like just being shot from a cannon wouldn't have set Zwei on fire. So I'm like, what if he can literally turn himself into a fireball? I feel like that would work really well with Rwby and Yang as, his owners. Yeah, because like you have Yang with fire and then Rwby with being able to shoot herself at high speeds. I feel like that'd be really cute if his semblance was a mix of them. And then just yeets the corgi. John groaned with exhaustion as he stumbled towards his dorm room. Ever since Carton had found out about his fake transcripts, he'd been doing all manner of errands for him in just those in just those few short days. Most of them didn't even make sense. He'd washed all his clothes, buffed his armor, cleaned his room, but then he'd also been taking notes on rapier wasps, of all things. I have no idea what that is. Rapier wasps. Is that like... I'm trying to remember if that's like a type of grim. I think it's a type of... But like most grim are named after fantasy things, like Beowulfs, Ursa, that kind of thing. So that's why... I'm gonna have to check that. It could also just be like a reference to like another Rooster Teeth work. I'm actually curious enough to Google this. Oh! Okay, okay. It is a little creature, but we don't know much about them. It's you'll remember what they are in a second. I don't believe they actually call them this in the show, but I know what they are now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's the bees. Yeah, I didn't recognize the name either until I read it, and from what I can tell, they never use the name in the show. This is like outside knowledge. There's really only two reasons why boys are out this late at night. John would have squealed if it wouldn't have woken up his teammates. Stepping out of the shadows emerged an old man with a gray beard. They're either in trouble or seeing girls. So tell me, what trouble are you in, young man? That's Iroh. He caught him. Oh no, he's Iroh. Hey, wait, I know you. You're the guy who works in the kitchen. Zuko's uncle, right? That's right, but you can call me Iroh. It honestly, that I think it's more like Gojo looks like Ozpin. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That's right, but you can just call me Iroh. It'd be pretty strange if you called me uncle. He let out a good-natured chuckle, and John quickly began to wave his hands through the air to try and silence him. Huh? Oh, wait, hold up. Do. Huh? Oh, right, your team. Let's go somewhere to talk, shall we? John hesitated in confusion, before following reluctantly. Why exactly did this old man want to speak to him? Iroh led him out to one of the balconies, taking a moment to gaze up at the full moon in the sky. After enjoying the beauty of seeing the whole moon for once, instead of that broken horror show of the second moon, Iroh turned back to the young man with him. So, what is a young man like yourself doing out so late, hm? Oh, no reason. Just wanted to take a little walk. And that's why you're covered in dirt? And I thought I got lost. Well, you're a better liar than my nephew. I am still an old man, and I can wait a long time for the truth. John rubbed his hands together nervously. I wasn't really going for a walk. I was doing this thing for a friend. Doesn't sound like a very nice friend if they're making you sneak around at night. No, he's a bitch. You went quiet for a second. I'm like, oh no, did Serge die? What did he get? Oh god, what did he send me? Get her, Zuko! Oh. It's Zuko just losing. Is that an actual clip from the show? That's hilarious. I see it now. Well, he's not really a friend. More of a person that knows something about me. Oh, and what did your team say about this? Not much. I kind of didn't tell them. Why not? Surely they'd be willing to help you if you needed it. They would, but I don't want them to. I need to do this by myself. Ira regarded him in silence for a long time. You know, you sound a lot like my nephew. Always think you need to do things on your own without anyone's support. Didn't your nephew set fire to the cafeteria? Sorry. I'm sorry, the laugh just slipped out. Yeah. Just set fire to the... Hey, Foxtrots. Hi, Foxtrots. Just like, yeah, I guess my nephew did set fire to the cafeteria. Because, like, the thing is, like, Good Witch's semblance, she can, like, repair shit like she did in the food fight. But she can't repair, like, fire. And I am alive, doing much better since, recovering from surgery. I'm still hurting sometimes, but I'm doing okay. That's why we're talking fanfiction. Yeah, my brother beats me up. Rude. Well, you don't have his temper, at least. John and Iroh chuckled together briefly before the elderly man became serious again. My nephew has often fought to do things on his own, believing that only he could fix his problems, that only he could make himself strong. Oh, come on! Oh, come on, Zuko's here on a combat scholarship. The only other person like this is Pyrrha, and she's unbelievably strong. And do you think she accomplished that much on her own? No. There's nothing wrong with letting people who love you help you. You came to Beacon to become a huntsman, and there's no shame in admitting that sometimes you need a helping hand with that. John hung his head in shame. Do not let your pride blind you and hold you back. A drop of rain is not mighty, but together with others it forms a mighty... It forms a mighty ocean. You ruined the dramatic Iroh quote. Ah. I love that, like, my tablet started tilting and then my whole model just tilted with it. Rip. Do you always talk in old wise man speak? Iroh laughed. A habit from being with my nephew for so long. You always talk so much! I feel like Yang would say that. She wouldn't, like, intend it to be rude, but she's like, damn, old man, you like to talk! What did you do? Why were you holding a knife? Dumbass! And you call me the dumbass. You would have been taken out like Achilles himself. Yeah. I thought I should deal with these things myself. John slumped onto the ground. And now? I'll stand up to him? But I'll... It's very intriguing. That's like the whole point of wanting to do this series. I need to show fanfiction isn't all bad. Uh, his face began to fill with hope before swiftly falling again as he realized something very important. I wanted to be able to at least stand with my team, not just rely on them, but I can't beat him, though he's better than me. Oh? Iroh slowly sat down next to him, letting out a minor groan from his age as he did so. Better than you, or simply bigger? Bigger? Does that matter? Iroh looked at him as if he'd missed the most obvious thing in the world. Of course! Bigger people are always so keen to use their strength, throwing their weight around without a care for tactics or finesse. But more importantly, when the method fails, too does their will to push you around. Stand up. John awkwardly did so along with Iroh, though the latter moved a fair few meters away from him before facing him again. Now I want you to pretend that I am this Cardin boy and try to intimidate me. Alright. He awkwardly dropped into his fighting stance as he watched Iroh draw himself to his full height and puff out his chest. Though the elderly man's short stature and large gut made him look more comical than threatening. Listen, Cardin, I'm not doing what you want anymore, so, just leave me alone. It sounded pathetic, even to his own ears, though the way Iroh was looking down at him seemed to imply that it wasn't the words that he was critical of. Your stance, it's all wrong. Whoa, what is that? Yeah. Yeah. John faltered. What's wrong with my stance? Iroh shook his head and walked over to the boy. With a poor stance, you are unbalanced, and you can be easily knocked over. He darted forward and threw John to the ground. Yay! The blonde groaned and began to rub his butt in pain. Iroh extended a hand towards him, which he gratefully took. With a solid stance, you are a much more serious threat. Iroh dropped into the correct position, watching as John then imitated him. Iroh pushed his hips forward slightly and dropped his arms marginally. Much better, Iroh praised as he gave the boy a slight shove, nudging him only slightly. It's also a very good chance to throw your opponent off balance. Iroh dropped into the stance he had John try and push him, quickly deflecting his arms and moving to push him. He stopped just before he did, showing John the key positioning of his arms, as well as how he'd moved his own foot forward to pull John's out from under him at the same time. He repeated the exercise a few times, alternating between demonstrating and having John practice it. After a few attempts, Iroh sighed dramatically and rested against the balcony railing. Though really, I'm far too old to be teaching much anymore. Perhaps, however, that young pure lady can help you. It wasn't subtle, not even to John, but he smiled and nodded anyways. Maybe, but I kind of made a mistake. She offered to help me before. She offered to help me before, and well, I told her what I told you, that I had to do it myself. It is usually best to admit mistakes when they occur and seek to restore honor. Iroh placed a hand on his back and began to lead John back towards his dorm. Be honest, and tell her what you've learned. Hey, Ark! Cardin's voice reverberated loudly throughout the forever fall forest. The boy in question looked over to him, his teammates taking protective steps towards him. He held up a hand as they paused, stepping back only slightly as they all eyed the bully before them. Cardin smirked in smug satisfaction, his own team likewise enjoying the sight of John cowing a bit to them. Ark knows his place. Good. Hey, John, buddy. Why don't you come hang out with us for a little bit? John frowned and slowly began to walk towards him. John, you don't have to. It's okay, Pyrrha. He flashed her a reassuring smile as he looked back to her. Hesitantly, she backed off, and he continued towards Cardin. Smart move, John. We'd hate for your friends to be rude now, wouldn't we? So why don't we go and... No. That caught Cardin off guard. What? Listen here, John. No, you listen to me. I'm not listening to you anymore, Cardin. I've changed. And I trust my team. You're not gonna bully me anymore. Oh, really? Cardin was beyond angry. He was livid. First, the Zuko brat embarrassed him. Now, apparently John, of all people, thought that he could boss him around? Are you forgetting that little secret of ours? No, I'm not. But you're forgetting one thing. My team's here, and whatever happens, they'll still be here. The rest of Juniper formed up behind their leader, drawing their weapons threateningly. Zuko whirled through the air, fire blasting from his legs as he viciously attacked his imaginary foe. Fire punches and kicks. What? You ready, bro? It is on site. It is on site. Maybe I should start specifying when there's a line break. So the mental image of Zuko just zooming in on site is hilarious. Mm-hmm. That's That's actually really funny. Okay. Let me catch where I was. Fire punches and kicks melded seamlessly together as he continued his assault. Refusing to give them even the slightest relief, he ducked a counter and whipped towards the ground, burning away the grass before him. His opponent leapt to avoid the attack before being caught in the air with a charged fire blast. They went down and stayed down. Whoa! Rwby openly cheered while Yang and Blake clapped enthusiastically. Weiss was more modest with her applause. As a thank you, Rwby had wanted to see Zuko's firebending so that she could compare it to the woman working with Roman. The others had been curious too, and so they tagged along for this demonstration. Zuko didn't mind. Having his bending back felt amazing, and he hadn't wanted to wait any longer than he'd had to practice. To feel that the fire was flowing through himself again. To feel the heat in his veins. There wasn't anything quite like it. Well, in his veins. Okay. Well done, Zuko! His uncle walked over and embraced him in a tight hug. Charging your attacks, the flow form from one to another? You've truly mastered your basics. While to the others, saying that he had mastered his basics might have sounded a bit underwhelming, both Iroh and Zuko knew what it really meant. He'd finally become a master firebender in his own right. Leagues behind his sister, admittedly, but I know, right? But Zuko was in too much of a good mood to care about that. Being a true Master Firebender meant that he was far beyond any ordinary bender. Others could use Master-level moves, to be sure, but they skipped their basics to do so, and were in fact weaker for it. Zuko would be considered one of the most powerful benders of his world, and no longer such a failure. Their celebrations were cut short as they heard the sound of arguing. Off in the distance, Team Rubies and Iroh could just about make out the figures of Team Juniper and Team Cardinal. John and Cardin were in the middle of a heated argument, with Zuko only faintly able to hear something about staying away. It turned violent just as quickly as it ended, with Cardin stepping up to shove John over, and quickly finding himself flat on his ass. Let's go! A fire yeah. He got blown away by Zuko's prowess. A Fire Nation counter, Zuko thought. Where'd he learn that? Cardin's team moved to attack John, but quickly halted as the Blonde's own team stepped forward. Whatever they were arguing about, it was clear that Cardin was backing down. Iroh smiled with pride. Bullies were cowards wherever they were from. Threaten them with losing and embarrassment, they would usually give up straight away. That was the trick. Never give up without a fight. Iroh frowned as he looked towards his bag. Without a word to Zuko or his team, Iroh wandered deep within the Forever Fall forest. Officially, he was coming along on the student field trip to make sure Zuko behaved. In reality, unpacking his things by the river he'd found, Iroh laid the portrait of a young man against a rock. He positioned it carefully, giving it a beautiful view of the gently flowing river, and the magnificent leaves that drifted down from the trees. Happy birthday, my son. If only I could have helped you. Tears began to drip down his cheeks as grief squeezed at his heart. His voice cracked as the tears grew, but he pushed on and sang his son's favorite song. Fuck! Fuck! Wait, let me actually put Leaves from the Vine if we're doing this. I would do that, but like I would quite. Let me go ahead and just turn off the Let me go ahead and get Leaves from the Vine going, bro. Boop. Boop. There we go. Leaves from the Vine's playing. I'm gonna cry. Do we know how old his son was? Oh, I'm sorry, the red mist. Yeah. I'm playing it in the background. Yeah. Gonna turn on my tears. God, it makes it so much sadder. because this episode was also to honor his VA, the original VA who passed away, which is so sad. Okay. I'm okay. Yeah, because his original VA passed away during the animation of book two, and that's the reason that during book three he doesn't talk much. It's basically a moment of silence from Iroh to honor his original voice actor. Okay, my heart hurts. Okay, here you go. He dropped. I'm also here like Ba Sing Se is also where his son died too. No, no, I kind of suspect that where we see him put the memorial is where his son died. That's my guess. Because it's like on the outskirts of Ba Sing Se. So I do think it is where his son died, but just leaves from the vine, bro. Okay, let's continue. He dropped his head into his hands, letting the tears spill out freely. There was a snap of a twig behind him, and Iroh turned to see a young red-haired woman paused awkwardly as she had attempted to back away quietly. I, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mr. Lee. Iroh smiled sadly. It's quite all right, young lady. I wanted to show my son the beauty of the world, but that does not mean it's private. She had obviously wanted to speak to him, so he patted the ground beside him as he gazed at the forest before him. Slowly, hesitantly, she came over and sat down quietly and respectfully as she could. I'm sure your son would have loved to see this. As do I. He continued his sad smile in remembrance of when Lu Ten was but a child, and he used to run through the palace gardens in excitement. So you must be the Pyrrha girl on John's team. What brings you to me? He said it kindly to assure her that he felt no ill will towards her, seeing him in his grieving. This place isn't very safe, so I started following you when I saw you walking away. I wanted to make sure you were safe, and I wanted to thank you for helping John. He asked if I could help teach him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He is a smart boy. I don't think the wisdom was all him. He chuckled softly. No, admittedly it wasn't, but he had listened, and he had accepted it. That was something. That that was a beautiful song. I used to sing it to my son when he was a child. Can I would he like it if we sang together? He looked to her, smiling with thanks. I think he would. And that one also gets me because Pyrrha, remember what she's represented as in Rwby. She's represented as a fall leaf. Yeah. 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 So that, yeah. So I thought it was a very clever thing for the author to do, but also very sad. I'm good. I'm good. Like the actual episode just fucks me up. Yeah, we were all everyone was crying. Everyone was crying. Okay, that was chapter 10 or 11. I lost track. That was chapter 11 or that was chapter 10, excuse me. And the whole server was crying. I go back and edit it after. You're honestly you're honestly right. You're not wrong. I'll do that. I'll fix it. I promise. I get lazy editing it every time I do a different stream. It's okay, it's my fault. Anyways, thoughts on chapter 10? And I feel like it worked pretty naturally too. Yes. Review equals leaves from the vine. That is all. Traumatize them back. Iroh is just overall a really good character. Yeah. I will say there is an entire genre of crossover fic that is just Iroh giving characters advice. A lot of them are really cute. Maybe we'll do an episode that's just Iroh talking to people because they're usually one shots. Yeah, they're usually one shots, so like maybe 1,000 words at most. There's a really sweet one with L from Death Note. Yeah, they played Pai's show together. Yeah. A lot of people also tend to use Iroh in this way as kind of an afterlife figure, like a character meets him after they die. Yeah, kind of. Okay, let's continue. Chapter 11, A Trip into Town. Despite all the time Zuko had spent stuck in whatever alternate reality or different planet or whatever he was on, he never really got used to all the fake sounds he was constantly hearing. Case in point, whatever Rwby was currently doing on her scroll. She was tapping away furiously at the piece of glass, rapidly flashing colored lights illuminating her face, and strange beeps and boops. She's playing Candy Crush! Drowning out the other chatter of the cafeteria as everyone enjoyed their breakfast. She held her yeah? You got games on your phone? You got games on your phone? Just like fucking... I, I can't. God, I feel like Rwby would have been that kid. Honestly, that'd be fun. And this is a really good fic, and I have plenty of other really good fics to share. Uh, yeah. I've been harassing all of my friends. Alright. Yeah, it's only the big brother who cares about me. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. I swear one of the guys is lurking. I swear one of them is probably lurking in chat and just heard that. Honestly, yeah. Okay, let's continue. She had her tongue sticking out the side of her mouth, her eyes locked in concentration on the scroll, even as she constantly tilted it around in her hands. He didn't know. Yeah. Yeah, totally. What she could be doing, but that couldn't have been helping. As if to prove him correct, there was a sudden rapid beeping, and then everything went quiet. At least that was until she let out a whimper, the adorable little whine being punctuated by a pout. Sadly, he wished he could say it reminded him of his little sister. She looked she looked up and managed to catch Zuko's eye. Did you want to play? His brow furrowed in confusion. Play what? She hadn't been playing any game he recognized. Then again, he hadn't seen anyone playing anything even remotely similar to something like Hide and Explode. So it was probably just another weird quirk he'd let to discover. I forgot Hide and Explode was a thing. Firebending kids are on something. Just like Hide and Explode, oh well. I'm assuming that you God, the thing is, you know they're involving non-benders in this. That's gotta be kind of funny. What do you do? Punch them instead? They just gotta no, they gotta throw hands. No, I'm okay. What even is that, anyways? She gasped dramatically, slapping her hands against her cheeks with dismay. You have no Marvel vs. Capcom! I know you don't have a scroll, but how could you have never heard of Marvel vs. Capcom? I'm just. I'm gonna keep calling it Marvel vs. Capcom, I don't care. I've had to focus on other things besides mindless games in my life. Before Ruby could fully show just how offended she was over her favorite game being insulted, Blake quickly decided to change the subject. So, you think the school could lend you a scroll? There are some classes where you need it and you haven't been able to take part since the beginning of the year. No, I've asked about it. But budget constraints and all that. Besides, they're already paying my uncle, so I figure he'll buy me one once he's saved enough money. Geez, I figured a school like this could afford to help out someone here that's on a scholarship. What if one of us ever needs to contact you? Yang said, surprised at the school's dismissal at someone like Zuko not having a device that was so practically essential. And what about when you go to Vale? How do you not get lost? Weiss had finally joined in. Zuko groaned internally and externally, not bothering to answer Yang's question. I've never even been to Vale, so it doesn't matter. You've never been to... That's it. Weiss slammed her fist onto the table, standing up straight to appear as much like an authority as possible. Today we are going into Vale, and today is just the perfect day for it too. Oh no. Zuko really didn't want to go into town and be bored for the day. Seeking sanctuary, he turned to his actual team leader. Can you overrule her, please? Nope, she's right. We need to show you around Vale today. She paused, remembering something else that Weiss had said. Wait, what's so special about today, Weiss? The heiress had already left, leaving Yang and Blake to only shrug their shoulders as Ruby's questioning eyes roamed all over them. No doubt she had already disappeared off in her excitement. Yes? Who? Yeah, his name is literally Sun Wukong. They literally just named him that. Yeah. It just makes Sun a god. Honestly, he should have had like what was his semblance again? He can like create like hard like clones of himself, right? I feel like they could have done more with him. It could have been done better. I love Bumblebee, but it could have been done better. I will always be bitter. It's like awkward how they write him out too, unfortunately. Like he's like such an important part during Blake's time of this time skip, and then he just kind of bounces. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not great. Zuko's eyes roved. Zuko's eyes roved around the city in wonder. It truly was magnificent to see just what the other towns and cities of this new world looked like. What? Hey, how are you doing? Special guest starring Jem. No, you gotta listen to fanfic. Rude. Okay, go mimis. Yeah, we're doing it's an imagine it's like an official audiobook and like we are talking to you to sleep. Okay. Zuko. I just realized what he said. He said deafened, not muted. Asshole. All right. I'm being insulted. Zuko's eyes roved around the city in wonder. It truly was magnificent to see just what the other towns and cities of this new world would look like. As he'd been expecting, they were nothing like the ones in the Fire Nation or the Earth Kingdom. Not a single wooden being or thatch rooftop in sight. Instead, everything was brick or stone or even metal of all things. Glass replaced open windows, and wooden or dirt roads were fully paved. It almost felt like being back near the palace again in some aspects. The high quality architecture, the clean streets. And yet, he still loathed the sight of it. He was in a good mood, make no mistake, and seeing more of the world was interesting. But it felt almost wrong that somewhere so unimportant, so normal, could ever compare to the Fire Nation Palace. Beacon he could begrudgingly accept. It was, after all, a fairly prestigious academy, and with everything else that angered him about living there, Zuko took a deep breath and pushed it to the back of his mind. What he had once thought his home was gone now. No amount of bitterness would bring it back. It was a hard truth to swallow, and one he still hadn't. But ever since he'd come to accept his place on Team Ruby's after months of living with them, it hadn't felt quite as bad. He glanced to his team in question by his side as they walked through the streets of Vale. Balloons and streamers were already filling the city in preparation for some kind of festival. One old man had even taken it upon himself to hang up a banner with the words "Welcome to Vale" written on it in bright red English letters. Chat, that's my boyfriend, Serge! Shame. The Vital Festival? Oh, this is absolutely wonderful. Weiss was practically skipping with glee. I don't think I've ever seen you smile this much, Weiss. Ruby tilted her head in a mixture of surprise and confusion. It's kind of weirding me out. How could you not smile? A festival dedicated to the cultures of the world. There'll be dances, parades, a tournament. Oh, the amount of planning and organization that goes into this event is simply breathtaking. Yang sighed as she crossed her arms. You really know how to take a good thing and make it sound boring. Quiet, you! The team rounded the corner, finally arriving at their destination, after agony knows how long of walking. Remind me again why we're spending our Friday afternoon visiting the stupid docks. Zuko frowned dramatically. I hope it's good. You know, riding in one of those bullhead things just to get here isn't exactly fun. What? What? Okay. Oh, please, you were fine. To his surprise, he actually had been. Years of being out at sea and months of watching the Avatar fly away from him made the whole trip not as bad as he'd expected. It was still boring, though. Besides, this is the best time for you to see Vale. I've heard that students visiting from Vacuole will be arriving by ship today, and as a representative of Beacon, I feel that it is my solemn duty to welcome those to the fine kingdom. No one believed her for a moment, and Blake took it upon herself to set the record straight. She wants to spy on them, so she'll have the upper hand in the tournament. You can't prove that! Whoa! I mean, Vacuo next to Menagerie is the one with the most faunus. So, you might not entirely be wrong. Whoa, Ruby pointed towards a nearby building, its windows smashed and two detectives inspecting the area. What happened here? Robbery. Second dust shop to be hit this week. This place is turning into a jungle. The detective walked off towards his partner. That's terrible. Yang sighed in sadness and looked away. Zuko, however, took a few steps over towards the building, just close enough so he could hear the two detectives talk clearly to each other. They left all the money again. Yeah, it just doesn't make a lick of sense. Who needs that much dust? I don't know, an army? You thinking the White Fang? Yeah, I'm thinking we don't get paid enough. The White Fang. Weiss crossed her arms in a huff. Wait, who's the White Fang? Zuko asked, walking away from the cough so they couldn't be overheard by them. They're an awful bunch of degenerates. What's your problem? I hope I'm serving Weiss's sass, right? What's your problem? To Zuko's surprise, Blake, of all people, looked to be annoyed by Weiss's explanation. My problem is I simply don't care for the criminally insane. The White Fang is hardly a bunch of psychopaths. Blake turned to Zuko, who still looked confused. They're a collection of misguided faunus. Misguided? They want to wipe humanity off the face of the planet. So then they're very misguided. Either way, it doesn't explain why they would rob a dust shop in the middle of downtown Vale. Zuko had noticed how quickly she'd changed the subject slightly and narrowed his eyes. He'd have to do his own research on them at some point. Rwby either didn't notice or just simply let it be as she answered. Blake's got a point. Besides, the police never caught that Torchwick guy I ran into a few months ago. Maybe it was him. That still doesn't change the fact the White Fang are a bunch of scum. She whirled on Blake in anger. Those faunus only know how to lie, cheat, and steal. Yang stepped in to try and defuse the situation. That's not necessarily true. Hey, stop that faunus! From the edge of the docks, Team Rwby's could easily spot the blonde-haired faunus as he leapt off the cargo ship. Rather astonishingly, he leapt on top of a lamppost and began to poke fun at the sailors who yelled at him. Monkey! I don't like monkeys, I'm scared. He got down from the lamppost and sped past the two detectives, making his way towards the team. For a brief moment, Zuko considered stopping him. The cops wanted him, and he was going to go right past Zuko. However, if you remembered correctly, many faunus were treated abhorrently for some reason. And so the guy was probably pretty desperate. Remembering the days he traveled through the Earth Kingdom, robbing others to survive, Zuko let him pass. Yang watched in amusement as he got further and further away. Well, Weiss, you wanted to see the competition? There it goes. Quick, we have to observe him. Weiss gave chase as quickly as her high heels would allow her, and the rest of Team Rwby's followed, more from wanting to stay together than agreement. As Weiss rounded the corner of them, however, she smacked straight into somebody and fell over. When she looked again, it was just in time to see him disappear over the rooftops. He got away! Weiss? Yang pointed to the girl she sat on top of. She quickly jumped off, her hands raising apologetically, even as the girl laid smiling on the ground. It's the Monkey King, Sang Wukong! Also, salutations! Hello? Are you okay? I'm wonderful! Thank you for asking! The team looked to each other in bewilderment before Yang turned her attention back to the strange girl on the ground. Do you want to get up? Yes! She eagerly leapt to her feet, the team taking a step back in discomfort. My name is Penny. It's a pleasure to meet you. Hi, Penny. I'm Rwby. I'm Weiss. Blake. Zuko here. Are you sure you didn't hit your head? Oh, I'm Yang. It's a pleasure to meet you. Weiss raised an eyebrow at her. You already said that. So I did. Well, sorry for running into you. Rwby waved goodbye as they turned to leave. Take care, friend. She's a robot. I feel like that's one other thing I always wondered about early Rwby. Wouldn't it Weiss have heard a dang from running into straight metal? After they'd gotten a safe distance away, Yang was the first to speak. She was weird. I know I find a lot of normal things strange, but that was strange, right? Bring back the monkey. Weiss ignored Yang and Zuko, already looking at the rooftop for clues. Now where'd that faunus riffraff run off to? Penny? suddenly appeared before them. How dare you? What did you call me? Yang looked immediately apologetic. Oh, I'm really sorry. I definitely didn't think you heard me. No, not you. Penny walked over to Rwby. You! Me? I don't know. You called me friend. Am I really your friend? Uh, the rest of Team Ruby's, Zuko included, began to make big no motions with their hands from over Penny's shoulder. Yeah, sure. Why not? Sensational! We could paint our nails and try on clothes and talk about cute boys. Like him. He understood the assignment like, okay, we do not want to deal with this level of crazy. I respect him. Penny pointed straight at Zuko, who promptly dropped his head into his hands and wished he were anywhere else. I have heard many good things about scars on boys, although yours looks very different from how it was described to me. She's a robot. She don't know. She don't get. And just like that, Zuko's embarrassment turned into anger. While the team seemed content to chuckle at Zuko's suffering, it was actually Yang who decided to lend him a hand. So, what are you doing in Vale? I'm here to fight in the tournament. Wait, you're fighting in the tournament? Weiss put her hands on her hips in disbelief, while Penny saluted. I'm combat ready. Forgive me, but you hardly look the part. Says the girl wearing a dress. Perhaps it was spite from chuckling at him a moment ago, but Zuko couldn't stop himself. Nor did he bother to try. It's a combat skirt. Besides, you're one to talk. You fight in rags. Oh, I'm sorry. I suppose I should have worn my dirty school ones instead? Weiss was about to snap back at him when a realization hit her. Wait a minute. She whirled on Penny. If you're here for the tournament, does that mean you know that monkey-tailed rapscallion? The who? Stop disrespecting the Monkey King! The filthy bonus from the boat. Alright, them fighting words. Why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep saying that? Snapped Blake, Zuko's eyes narrowing once again. Huh? Stop calling him a rapscallion. Stop calling him a degenerate. He's a person. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like me to stop referring to the trash can as a trash can? Or the lamppost as a lamppost? Stop it! Don't call the trash can. It's not a trash can. Not. That's so dumb. I'm so sorry. Stop it! Stop what? He clearly broke the law. Give him time. He'll probably join up with those other faunus in the White Fang. You ignorant little brat. The argument continued for several hours, even as they headed home. Their trip into the town ruined. Inside their dorm, Zuko was desperately trying to drown out the sounds of Weiss and Blake bickering by catching up on some of his homework. Much like a person's semblance, auras have been known to activate in times of extreme distress. While it's typical for huntsmen and huntresses in training to have their auras unlocked by teachers or more advanced fellow students, it is not uncommon for dangerous training exercises to result in the activation of, I don't understand why this is causing such a problem. And he was back. That is the problem, Blake fumed. And it just drags you back like, the fuck did you say? That is the problem, Blake fumed, pacing around the room in an attempt to try and vent at least some of her anger. Weiss stood up from the bed she had been arrogantly laying on. You realize you're defending an organization that hates humanity, don't you? The faunus from the White Fang are pure evil. There's no such thing as pure evil. Why do you think they hate humanity so much? It's because of people like Cardin. People like you. That forced the White Fang to take such drastic measures. No such thing as pure evil? Zuko's mind drifted to the air nomad genocide, a slaughter which had been lied and turned into a glorious victory for the Fire Nation. I know, right? Honestly, that's fairly accurate. That that was pure evil. Turning the murder of innocent and harmless people into something that was celebrated could never be justified, except by father. Zuko pushed those treacherous thoughts to the back of his mind. That was the past. He didn't want to think about it again. People like me? You're discriminatory. I'm a victim. Perhaps the first time that night, Weiss grew quiet, rage dripping from her words. You want to know why I despise the White Fang? Why I don't particularly trust the Faunus? It's because they've been in war with my family for years. War, as in actual bloodshed. My grandfather's company's had a target painted across its back for as long as I can remember. And ever since honestly, ever since I was a child, I've watched family friends disappear, board members executed, an entire train car full of dust stolen. That is not on the same level of everything else you just said, girl. And every day, my father would come home furious, and that made for a very difficult childhood. Ruby stepped forward. I bet like Zuko's just in the corner like, bitch. Who could ever a drama? That's right, the Red Mist. Who could ever relate? No! She batted Ruby's hand away and stalked over to Blake. You want to know why I despise the White Fang? It's because they're a bunch of liars, thieves, and murderers. Well, maybe we were just tired of being pushed around. The room went deathly quiet as the others stared at Blake in shock. Even Zuko, who hadn't really cared one way or another about Faunus, looked in surprise. I... Her eyes widened in horror at the words which escaped her lips. Blake ran out of the room. Blake! Come back! And that was chapter 11. Six. Yep. And the last time... I will tell you when the last time this fic updated at the end of it. Fair. Something that, so a thing that happens a lot of the time with Rwby fanfics is that they have a habit of starting in volume 1, and the author usually stops before volume 2. It's an unfortunate trait. That's why I feel like I wish more Rwby fanfics would start later in the series, since so many of them start in 1. It's gotten to the point that I have, like, 1 memorized through this. That's why when you ask things, I'm like, yeah, no, that it's that way. I always feel like 3 is a good place to start for a fic, personally. Because, like, what I want to see is fics that try and fix the later seasons. Yeah, I've never seen one that did that. Anyways, chapter 12, Searching. When the morning came, and Blake's bed remained empty, there was no question about whether or not they would look for her. Rwby had been the first to suggest it, with Yang, Blake, and Zuko all quickly agreeing. Weiss went along without protest, however, she was not as enthusiastic as the rest of them, but she kept her complaints to a minimum. Mostly. None of them really knew if they would find Blake, or if she'd ran away in Vale to begin with, but they had to try, even if there wasn't a sign of her. Blake! Rwby yelled as they walked down the street, her sister joining in after her. Blake! Blake, where are you? Blake! Zook had refused to yell along with the sisters. Instead, he'd been taking the time to question any locals they passed by. After he'd finished with the most recent stranger, he walked back over to his team. Still nothing. No one's seen her. Rwby rounded on the only non-contributing member of the team. Weiss, you're not helping! You know who might be able to help? The police. Weiss, it was just an idea. A bad one. As they headed down a different street, Yang took it upon herself to try and calm things down somewhat. Weiss, we should really hear her side of the story before we jump to any conclusions. I think that when we hear it, you'll all realize I was right. And I think Weiss's hair looks wonderful today. I forgot. I always forget that. Honestly, Honestly, like, it was like weird animation in the first few seasons, but it was funny animation. Ah, Penny, where did you come from? Hey guys, what are you up to? We're looking for our friend Blake. Oh, you mean the Faunus girl? The team stared at Penny in surprise, an awkward silence growing as they each tried to process what they just heard. Wait, how did you know that? Yep. The cat ears? Penny pointed at her head, confused as to why they were surprised. What cat ears? She wears a oh! The team was silent, having suddenly realized how obviously she disguised herself. Zuko at least took comfort in the fact that he was still new to this whole different humans thing. Rwby felt fairly embarrassed, however. So, where is she? We don't know. She's been missing since Friday. That's terrible. Penny walked straight up to Rwby and clapped her hands on her shoulders. Well, don't you worry, Rwby. My friend, I won't rest until we find your teammate. I mean, I do ship Nuts and Dolts. That's what that ship... The ship name is called Nuts and Dolts. They're... Dude, I feel like no fandom has weirder shipping names than Pokemon. Pokemon has the weirdest. Terrible dad shipping. Yeah, it's Getsus and Giovanni. What is another weird one? Anti-gravity is Getsus and Colress. Ferris wheel shipping is Hilda and N, which I think is kind of cute. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them that came out like recently too. I can't remember them. I believe that Kabu and Larry is called fried sushi shipping. I know this is a horrible tangent. That's really nice of you, Penny, but we're okay. Really? Right, guys? She turned to her team for support, only to find that they had all rapidly ditched her in favor of their own survival. Zuko... Why did you do the Audrey sniffing? Zuko peeked carefully around the corner, his good eye barely visible as he put his sneaking skills to use. Finally, he saw Penny drag Rwby away down the road in the opposite direction of them. Okay, she's leaving. We're free. Yang and Weiss breathed. Make sure she's gone! Yang... yeah. Yang and Weiss breathed a dramatic sigh of relief. Thank God there's no way I'm looking around town with her. Oh, come on, Weiss. You barely wanted to look around town anyways. Weiss opened her mouth to argue, but the case with Yang, but Zuko cut her off before she could begin, if only for his own sanity rather than to save Yang. Do you think Rwby will be angry? Oh, please. She's the one who said they were friends, so she can deal with her. Hey, now, Zuko's right. I mean, Ruby's pretty forgiving, but maybe we should apologize later just so we don't burn any bridges? Eh? Yang looked to both of her teammates for support, the growing silence doing little to wipe away the smug grin on her face. After the stupidity of the joke had fully registered with him, Zuko turned and quickly walked away. I'm not staying with her. What? It was funny! Zuko ignored Weiss as she begged for him to come back, if only so she could lump Yang's joke onto somebody else. Zuko didn't stop, however, and after a few turned corners and streets traveled, he was completely away from them. Well, at least I can think now. The morning had been focused entirely on finding Blake, so he hadn't had much chance to truly think on her revelation the night before. The fact that she was Faunus meant very little to Zuko. While he didn't know much about them, it didn't seem like they were too different from humans as far as personality went. No. These damn furries! Wait, like, no, I'm thinking of something else. I was gonna say, like, didn't Fire Nation, like, have, like, paintings of, like, animal heads? But I'm like, I'm thinking of a different anime. There's no furries in the Fire Nation, I'm sorry. know, I need that on a t-shirt. She said, we were tired of being pushed around. So she was likely in the White Fang at some point. Probably recently. So can I trust her? His gut reaction was to say no. If she used to be one like Weiss had called the White Fang, then that meant she was an enemy of humans, of Zuko. She implied that she used to be, however, which meant she wasn't anymore. A change of heart? Irrelevant. Faunus were treated like garbage and childhood trauma wasn't something someone could forget. If she had believed in them once, then she could believe in them again, which meant her a threat not only to himself, but to his uncle. He'd almost lost him once thanks to Azula, but he wouldn't let that happen again. And when it really came down to it, what could he do to assure himself that she'd changed? He supposed he could trust in her as a teammate, he supposed, as a friend. That was a problem, though. Zuko hadn't trusted anyone beyond his uncle for years, not even his crew. They were all failures of the Fire Navy, dumped under his command as a formality rather than a gift. His father had trusted him to capture the Avatar, but the soldiers and sailors who he ordered around had no such mission, simply being told to follow him for his rank as Crown Prince. He would bring them as support like he did when he attacked the Southern Water Tribe or Kyoshi Island, but he wouldn't rely on them to bring him victory. He tried trusting them to put the Avatar in the brig, and they couldn't even handle that. The brat was running around his ship just moments later. They'd ratted him out of Zhao and told him that the Avatar had returned. Worthless, each and every one of them. But he didn't hate them, as much as they no doubt assumed he had. He wouldn't let a single man under his command die needlessly like some callous monster, not like Zhao. But he couldn't trust them. Couldn't believe them to have his back when he needed it. No. They were all just as likely to put a knife in or leave it. And none of them had any particular agenda against him. Are you dead? Oh, okay, I heard like a weird static on your end. Oh my god! Turtle jump scare. And yet, Zuko found that he couldn't quite condemn Blake. It should have been as simple as that she was an enemy and he had to watch her or deal with her, but he couldn't, and he didn't know why. Is it because I want to trust her? He did. He wanted to trust her, to believe that she was better than that maybe they could be friends. It had been so long since he'd had a friend, so many years that he'd spent alone that he couldn't just give up on her. This was his team. Yeah? Yeah! That you're right, that was random as all hell. I think I see the train of thought. I think it's because we were talking about Marvel versus Capcom earlier. It had been so long since he'd had a friend, so many years that he'd spent alone that he just couldn't give up on her. This was his team, a group of people he would have to spend years working together with, and damn it! He wanted it to be good. So he could give her the benefit of the doubt. He can give her the chance to explain. But he was doing it for himself, not her. Hey, stop those thieves! The shout snapped Zuko out of his thoughts, and he turned to see a group of 3 men sprinting down the street towards him. Some old man was angrily waving his fists in the air from the outside of the shop, his eyes locked with the small bag in one of the man's hands. Zuko spotted the bag in his hands, as well as the gun in his other. It would kill him. A single bullet would end his life right there. The criminal running towards him seemed to think so too. He can catch it, he's built different. Those do not move as fast. As Zuko could see the gears turning in his mind as to whether shoot the teenager in his way or to try and get past him, Zuko didn't wait for him to decide. And a wave of fire washed over the man and sent him backwards onto the ground. The effect was immediate. Yay! As his 2 comrades quickly faltered in fear, another 2 blasts sent them to the ground as they hesitated and panicked. The difference between a master and an amateur was that an amateur thought while a master acted. although Zuko had perhaps a little too much experience in acting without thinking. Zuko grabbed the unconscious bodies of the three criminals and laid them out as two police officers arrived. In a rather strange coincidence, it was actually the same two detectives he'd seen the day before chasing the Faunus. Thanks for the help, citizen. We'll take it away from here. Zuko nodded and headed down the alley. Did you just say citizen? What? It's a saying. Yeah, but how old are you? Oh. Okay, which one of these guys had the money? It was the detectives. Yeah. It didn't have any, speech lines. That's what happened. Yeah. Zuko casually flicked through the various cards he'd helped himself to. He recognized some of them, mostly the ones he'd seen before as being lean. There were a few other. He robbed the dude when he caught him. Yeah. Yeah, Zuko robbed them. However, and he tossed, the rest he didn't recognize, however, and so he tossed them away into a nearby dumpster. Impressive, she looked out of, Impressive. She looked as out of place in the alleyway as Azula would in a daycare. The red dress may have accentuated her beauty, but it made her very difficult to forget, which its purpose probably was. Thanks. She had seen him take the stolen money for himself. Zuko had no doubts about that. But the fact that she wasn't mentioning it meant she was clearly after something. It's not every day you see someone who can use fire. It's very interesting. She walked closer to him, her high heels clinking like glass and her hips swayed seductively. I want that hoe obliviated! And yet, Mikai harassed. And yet you didn't burn them. I'm very careful. So I see. She walked around him, looking him up and down as if he was being inspected. She seemed pleased when she stopped in front of him. I never caught your name. Zuko. Zuko. She seemed to purr with approval, setting his hairs on edge. So, what does a man like yourself need with stolen money? New clothes. She eyed the hole in his... His priorities are straight. My pride! My ratty ass clothes she don't like, I gotta change them. She eyed the hole in his robe that he'd gotten a week ago and smirked. Follow me then. She turned and began to leave the alleyway, Zuko's feet hesitating for a moment, but he followed after her. It was bizarre, like he felt compelled to follow her just to see what she wanted with him. I never caught your name. I would. I would. Would. Wait, I have the hard eyes. Would. He's back! Oh, Surge, show him Cinder. Show him Cinder. Show him Cinder. Show him Cinder. We need the establishment, because would. I love me a woman who can top me. Ship them now. She's queen, wife. Send part one. Honestly, dude, her fit gets so cool. Yeah, Cynthia, get big. Biggest tits. So we're looking up for a picture of Cinder right now. I need that fan art today. It's volume 2, because we don't actually see her face until the end of volume 1. Yep. Yeah, I remember, and then we get, like, the really shitty cutouts of, early Mercury and Emerald. They're not silhouettes, bro. Look them up. They're so bad. Dude, they're literally JPEGs. They are literally JPEGs when we first meet them. It's hilarious. That is very good fan art. You see, at least she has booba. Unlike Cynthia. Okay. Zuko didn't need to see it to know that she was grinning, almost as if she were proud of him. No, you didn't, but tell me, where exactly did you learn such fire control? Uncle, he thought. Beacon, he said. A huntsman in training, then. It's so rare to find one who would help himself to another's belongings. I needed it more than he did. He got reminded of his sister. Honestly, oh yeah, that's right. He thought Cinder, when he first heard about the attack, he was like, oh shit, it was Azula. And he's like, oh, it wasn't blue. You know, like, it's like the panic. Calm. She wasn't scolding him, that much was clear even to Zuko. Instead, it seemed like she was far more interested in just why he'd done it. She didn't ask him any more questions after that, and Zuko kept his mouth shut to make sure he didn't let anything slip. She was watching him, watching how he moved, what he saw. She's studying me, he thought. Just why, Zuko didn't know. But he certainly wasn't going to ask. If she wanted something, then she would be the one to say it. When she stopped, they were outside a store which looked like any of the others he had passed without a second glance, but she clearly knew something more about it. This is the best store in Vale. Whatever you need, he'll make it for you. She waved lazily at the door before turning to face him, one eye covered in her dark locks, the other memorizing every little detail about him. I would love to know more about you, Zuko. One day. Until then. She turned and left with her head held high, and Zuko felt as if he had just been dismissed by his father. By someone who was far more powerful than him. He keeps drawing her compared. Cinder versus Zuko? Cinder, but I would be more inclined to say Zuko if he had his swords on him. He hasn't, yeah. I agree. But I also feel like Iroh is like, okay, this is the next best thing, because what are the odds he's gonna ever find that temple? There's a dragon! Yeah, true. Not a good one. Or, there is a good dragon. Can I help you? He wasn't particularly old, but the man who greeted him held years of experience in his gaze. I need some new clothes. Clearly. Custom made, or are you buying off the shelf? A thought flashed across his mind. Custom. Alright, you pay up front and you can come back in a few hours after I take your measurements. What sort of thing are you looking for? He needs his strip! It was dark when Zuko finally left the store, clad snugly in a new set of red and gold robes. Fire Nation robes. He burned the Earth Kingdom rags in his hands to ashes. No more would he ever have to wear that garbage. Instead, he had something that fit him. It felt like being home again. Zuko put his spare clothes into his new bag and slung it over his shoulder. In the hours he'd had to wait, he needed his drip, bro. Yeah, he needed his drip. Oh, hello, Bruce. Hi, perro. Yeah, you're good. He likes. Oh, nice. Did you see Cinder, by the way, the picture we sent? How do you guys do? I would make the noises, but my dog just walked in and he just got all comfortable and I don't want to disturb him. What? What are you guys talking about? Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Can't go nowhere without my drip. Exactly. Zuko put his spare clothes into his new bag and slung it over his shoulder. In the hours he'd had to wait for his clothes to be made, had gone on his own little shopping spree. Only for the essentials, of course. A sword sharpening kit and 2 scrolls were among his main purchases, one for him and one for his uncle. Then he could speak to him far more often than he had been of late, the downside of sharing a room with 4 girls on a different floor from him. He put those thoughts aside. Oh, you know something, like, even, like, the most basic girl is gonna take a while in the bathroom. This man must have, like, 5 minutes to use, like, to get ready for the day. Open the door! Open the door! Like, just having, like, 4 new sisters. Lucky boy! He put those thoughts away for later and readied himself mentally for the night of searching. He'd been waiting for night to come so that he could find Blake, since it was pointless to search during the day. Faunus could see at night, so that's when Blake would have moved. He and his team had been looking around during the day when Blake would hide. Now, however, he could put his sneaking skills to good use. At night and over the rooftops was the best time and way to move. Nobody looked up, and even if they did, they'd be hard-pressed to see anything. But for someone with experience, who knew what they were looking for, Zuko would spot her the moment she moved. An explosion caught his attention, and a close one at that. He could spy the smoke cresting up into the sky only a short distance away. It was close. Very close. And just at the docks, if he remembered correctly. Found you, Blake. And that was chapter 12. Oh, our music died again. What leaves of the off? Oh god, that hurt. You gotta do... Yeah, you have to do these from the... Is he gonna do an embossing say that? I mean, he still wanted to show him someplace beautiful, and the Forever Fall is beautiful. Yeah. Okay. And the fact her symbol is a leaf, like, her, not like her symbol, but like that they use this, like, a leaf to represent her, it just hurts. I mean, Canadians, that's the maple leaf. It's just a general fall leaf. If I don't know what the plant is. It might be a maple leaf, actually. I don't remember it. Yeah. Team Juniper doesn't have a logo, and Pyrrha's symbol is her sword, is her spear and shield. But no, I mean, what I meant by symbol is that when she finds out about the Fall Maiden business, a leaf keeps appearing by her in those scenes. Like, it keeps getting blown around her. Chapter 13, Black and White. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Chapter 13, Black and White. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Roman Torchwick kept his cane raised as he stalked towards the shipping containers before him. That irritating Faunus girl was somewhere behind them. If he could flush her out, then he could be rid of her before she grew from annoyance to a problem. That she'd interrupted his little dock's raid spoke volumes of her ability to annoy. To her credit, she wasn't as annoying as the other Faunus she was with, who had just dropped a banana peel on top of his head, freshly cleaned bowler hat. Ooh, ooh, monkey! Monkey's back! monkey! I remember he just drops a banana peel on his head. Leave her alone. The bullheads that he'd brought with him finally saw fit to step in and do their jobs, unloading several armed white fang onto the ground. Roman allowed himself to smirk as the animals quickly surrounded the blonde-haired faunus. You're not the brightest banana in the... I forgot he says that. You're not the brightest banana in the bunch, are you, kid? They stepped forwards to attack him, swords and guns raised to wipe out their treacherous brethren, before promptly being blasted away by a series of fireballs smashed into the ground. From atop a distant set of containers, a scarred teenager leapt through the air, fireballs flying from his fists and knocking down the remainder of the white bang who had arrived to help Roman. Oh great! More of you! The new arrival and the blonde faunus shared a glance with one another, but otherwise said nothing, their attention turning to the groans of their enemies as they tried to rise to their feet. Roman took the initiative, unlike the rodents around him, and raised his cane to blast them away. They dove away as the first shot hit the ground between them, the explosion ripping a small hole in the concrete where they stood. Any follow-up attacks were quickly dropped when a cat girl appeared out of nowhere and began to slash at him again. He's mine. Zuko spared only a glance to bake. Shut up. Return to monkey. I messed up. Zuko spared only a glance to Blake. I mean, maybe it would help him if he did. Zuko spared only a glance to Blake as she charged at the red-headed guy. He looked vaguely familiar. Like someone he might have passed on the street, though he still had no idea why they were fighting. The grim mask that his friends wore had made it fairly clear that he wasn't a good guy when Zuko had decided to intervene. Speaking of friends, the henchmen he'd knocked down were back on their feet, even if some of them still looked a little dazed. Zuko had forgotten about them possibly having a damn aura. The criminals he'd beaten up earlier had reminded him far too much of the usual time spent ending fights quickly. He didn't wait for them to make him regret his mistake, however, and he was on them in moments. He didn't bother drawing his swords as he leapt between his attackers, swords slicing uselessly through the air as they tried to hit him. His biggest threat were the guns that some of them held, as even one lucky shot would take him out of the fight for good. So he dodged around their pathetic excuses for swordsmen, and sent attack after attack into the real threats. Get your asses beat! Several well-placed kicks sent most of them off their feet and onto the floor again, the second time proving to be actually effective. The ones he didn't immediately get, however, were handled by his new temporary ally, who battled each other down with some kind of collapsible staff. The big problems dealt with, Zuko swiftly moved on to the remaining swordsmen, just as the blonde... Yeah? Mm-hmm. They're sawed-off shotguns, bro. He has such an absurd weapon. I love it. No, I understand them. The grim masked thugs were more nuisances than legitimate threats, each one armed but woefully undertrained. In a way, the whole fight reminded him of when Azula had tried to trick him after the siege of the north, blasting aside Imperial firebenders so that he could get to the real threat. Although Azula was much more terrifying than whoever this moron was. He was good, though. Not much was certain. During the short time it had taken for Zuko to knock down the thugs for good, he'd made an absolute mess of the docks. Several containers were blown apart with some type of advanced crane. The more pressing matter, however, was that Blake was down, and the man's exploding cane was leveled firmly at the blonde faunus's head. The blast of fire that Zuko kicked towards his head caught him off guard, but he recovered quickly. Not fast enough to escape the barrage of attacks Zuko unleashed upon him, desperate to keep him on the defensive and unable to blow Zuko apart with that cane of his. Unfortunately, the man's aura wasn't as pathetic as his henchmen's were, and as he let it absorb one of Zuko's attacks, he was quickly returning fire with his cane. I just twisted my wrist. I am proud. How? I don't know how, but I just popped my wrist. I'm just sitting here reading. Why? Fanfiction is dangerous. Okay. Reading is dangerous. Oh god. They were certainly quicker than arrows, and Zuko didn't have the benefit of an aura to help him if he couldn't dodge. But much to his own pride, he managed to just graze past the two blasts that rocketed towards him. The bowler hat man was completely out of patience, however, and shot the ground by Zuko's feet, flinging him away and into a nearby container. He let out a small yell of pain before he clambered back to his feet. Aura or no, he'd been smacked around by the Avatar. The criminal before him was nothing compared to him. He also wasn't a fool. As soon as Zuko made ready to fight, more and more of those strange balls of energy were hurling towards him. He learned from his mistake, however, and Zuko was quickly darting closer and closer to the man before he could take him down again. The two clashed against one another, fire daggers blazing from Zuko's fists as he pressed against the cane that had been placed between them. In terms of strength, Zuko should have had the edge, having trained for nearly his entire life and nearing the prime of his youth. Thanks to the man's aura, however, Zuko swiftly found himself being pushed back. Fire blazed as Zuko dashed away from the losing battle of brawn, his feet sweeping out to cover his retreat. Instead of charging back into the fray, however, his hands whirled through the air. Hot air shimmered, then burst into flames as it continued to whirl around him. Blasts of energy soared just past his head as he narrowly dodged. His hands continued their work, an inferno whirling around him as the flames grew brighter, higher, and hotter. In one swipe, he brought his hand crashing down to the ground and sent a torrent of fire towards his enemy. His brief pause and motions earned him a direct hit in the chest that sent him flailing away once more. But his attack had already been let loose. A colossal explosion consumed Tortwick, and the sweat boiled off his body from the heat. 1 second. I got a bug in my throat and I twisted my wrist. I twisted my wrist. I am on my desk. I was just trying to stretch my wrist because I've been like resting my head on it, and somehow this happened. Bruce is right here. He's a good boy. He would never hurt me. I mean, I have a lot of bruises and scars from him, but without shh. It's fine, it's fine. He crashed into a heap a short distance away, angry, in pain, and thoroughly humiliated, but still unharmed as he felt his preciously little remaining aura work its way through his body. He got up with a groan, relieved to find that the scar-faced punk who had just embarrassed him was still on the ground. Hey! Roman turned to look up at Rwby as she stepped in view on the rooftop. He swept off some of the soot from his jacket as he composed himself before smiling and waving dramatically, losing all interest in his three defeated opponents. Well, hello, Red. Isn't it past your bedtime? From behind her, Penny stepped forward curiously, daring a peek over her shoulder and down at the docks below them. Rwby, are these people your friends? Penny, get back. Roman raised his cane and fired, hitting Rwby directly as she was distracted and sending her scythe hurling away from her. The criminal allowed himself to enjoy a menacing laugh as he watched Rwby struggle to stand back up. Oblivious to Penny as she narrowed his eyes at him and stepped forwards. Penny, wait, stop! Don't worry, Rwby. I'm combat ready. I'm sorry, why did I put so much sauce on that? I do like Penny, I find her really fun. She leapt off the roof as the blade sprung from her backpack, hovering in the air as it split into a dozen separate ones. The bullheads, which had been content to watch the previous battle, flew towards her, intent on getting their own share of the fight. Their miniguns whirred as dust rounds tore up the concrete around her. The bullets which were on target were all deflected harmlessly as her blades formed a makeshift shield in front of her. The strafing run ended, the blades reformed into a circle, and a green orb of light pulsated inside. With a punch, a deadly beam shot out and tore one of the bullheads in half, the debris crashing into the ground in a powerful explosion. Roman watched angrily as the ship went down, his hand flying to the scroll by his side as it blew up. One of you pick me up, we're leaving. And for God's sake, will one of you animals at least take care of this bunch? He didn't want yet another group of brats to be around giving him trouble, but nor did he want to stick around to face whatever the hell that little girl was. One of the bullheads landed close by him when the second one flew over, guns already whirling up to wipe out the three he'd fought before. One final glance to the girl with the swords as she pulled another bullhead out of the sky, and he was quickly reassured about his decision to leave. These kids just keep getting weirder. Listen, I feel like at least Zuko is relatively normal. compared to whatever Penny's got going on here. I don't think that it would be to that degree, but at the same time, Roman's seen Cinder, so I feel like Zuko's fire is like not the most crazy thing. Zuko crawled to his feet just in time to see the bullhead turn towards him. Blake and the other faunus were likewise trying to make it to their feet, only they were moving much slower. Zuko's mind went haywire as he desperately thought of plan after plan, the bullheads glinting menacingly as they passed by one of the dock lights. He could run, maybe. If he focused on the other two, then he might just got out of the path of the attack, but that was slim at best. Not to mention he wasn't going to leave Blake to die, nor the other one, which meant he had to come up with some way of protecting them all. He knew of only one thing that he could do and pray to anything that would hear him that would work. He took a deep breath to clear his mind and set to work. His hands were moving before he could second-guess himself, circling in front of him as it gathered up the well of power from within him, and drew it into his fingertips. The energy in his body split as he made his final move, the bullhead letting rip with its gun as it closed in. He thrust his hand towards the craft, and a bolt of lightning leapt from his fingertips. It pierced the sky in a blinding, deadly light, striking the bullhead coursing through it, sparking every piece of it before it shot out the tail and into the ground. Thunder boom. Emperor. Zuko did a lightning. Zuko did a lightning. It said that he was panicked and he was just trying it. I can forgive it. It continued on its path, gun still quiet before it listed and fell out of the sky. It crashed into the ground with a fiery explosion, shreds of metal spitting out in every direction as it tore itself apart against the concrete. And a lightning semblance. Yeah, it's a big... I hadn't thought about that. I just killed those people. He flinched at the realization, the feeling of blood on his hands slowly creeping in. Quickly, he forced the thoughts from his mind. He'd long prepared himself for the day he would have to take a life, and he knew that if he hadn't done it, it would have cost him the life of not only himself, but the two others with him. It was a few hours... I'm pretty sure Zuko's already killed somebody. Like, you don't just go pew 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 and assume nobody gets hurt. He's probably killed at least someone. Like, he has a little blood on his hands. It was a few hours later when the police were all on scene, along with Yang and Weiss, who had eventually found them. As they arrived, Weiss began to storm towards Blake, determination in her eyes even as Rwby stepped protectively between them. Look, Weiss, it's not what you think. She explained the whole thing. See, she doesn't actually have a bow. She has kitty ears, and they're actually kind of cute. Weiss ignored her and stepped past, coming face to face with Blake, who looked down in shame. Weiss, I want you to know I'm no longer associated with White Fang. Back when I was with us. Stop! You have any idea how long we've been searching for you? 12 hours! That means I've had 12 hours to think about this. And in that 12 hours, I've decided I don't care. You don't care? You said you're not one of them anymore, right? No, I haven't been since I was younger. I don't want to hear it. All I want to know is that the next time something this big comes up, you'll come to your teammates and not some... She glanced at the blonde faunus disapprovingly. Someone else. Monkey! Zuko's right there! Yeah. Blake nodded, a tear dripping down her cheek as she smiled. Of course. Yeah! Team Ruby's is back together! The team stared at their leader, who shrugged apologetically for ruining the moment. Yeah? Right. Oh my god, just with like the nunchuck shotguns. That would be hilarious, honestly. You know that they would never do Team Sun, though. They do Ruby and Juniper, if anything. Ruby, yeah. Bruce is snoring. I'm looking over, like, you know how when you're asleep your eyes dart and, like, you can see him twitch? I can see his eyelids twitching. Oh, he started kicking! Oh, baby! I'm sorry. My son is so cute. No, he's a good dog. He's a very good dog. Don't be mean. Okay, let's go back. Bye. I should tell them. He thought he couldn't. He couldn't. He knew that. They would never believe him. They'd just think he was crazy. Even he had trouble believing it. But they at least deserve the chance to decide for themselves, right? So, Zuko, since when could you zap people with lightning? Zuko grimaced at Yang's remark. Clearly she had been told by Blake what had happened. He answered anyways, leaning as comfortably as he could against one of the containers. Since, now. I tried before, but it never worked. I actually didn't think it would work then, I just hoped it would. Really? Well, you might want to try a little sooner next time. Probably not the best idea to let your aura tank those shots. Zuko raised an eyebrow and followed where she was pointing towards his finger. It was a hole. A vicious tear in his new robes. Not from a sword slice, they hadn't gotten even remotely close enough to him. It was from that criminal Torchwick when he'd been hit. It hadn't just been some weak energy thing that had dispersed into the air or something. He'd been shot. And lived. How? His mind raced as he threw his hand to the hole, desperately trying to feel for where he'd been shot. There was nothing, not even a scratch. He'd stopped it. With an aura. How? Dude was like in such a life or death situation. His aura's like, okay, yeah, we better start. Or else we are very dead. Personally, I feel like the only reason he was able to lightning bend was because he got his aura going. Or at least that's my theory. I'm not going there. Roman sighed with tiredness from inside the warehouse. Even the mountain of dust that surrounded him, a testament to his skills and prowess, wasn't enough to lift his spirits. The dock's heist was supposed to be the biggest haul yet. It was why they'd been so open with their strength, after all. Instead, it was turned to a disaster. 3 bullheads destroyed, a ton of those white fang animals captured, or killed when their bullheads crashed, and his reputation taking a blow as well. How very disappointing, Roman. The voice sent a shiver down his spine, though he hid it well. He turned to face her, spying 2 other figures still in the shadows behind her. Whoa, hey, wasn't expecting you guys so soon. We were expecting more from you. He let out a nervous chuckle before his irritated pride returned. Hey, you were the one who suggested working with those stupid mutts from the White Fang. She chuckled, the sound which terrified him. And you will continue to do so. A fireball appeared in her hand, a less than subtle warning. We have big plans for you, Roman. All we ask is a little cooperation. But don't fear. You'll have the chance to redeem yourself. Her associate laid a scroll in front of him, looping footage of a robed teenager in action. Fireballs knocked down the White Fang grunts with ease before the footage changed to show lightning striking one of their bullheads before it fell from the sky. All you have to do, Roman, is find out about him. What do you want to know? Everything. A small document slapped onto the table from her hands. Details she already had on him. Basics, mostly. His name, where he studied, everything she'd been able to glean from their small conversation, and even his basic measurements provided by her personal tailor. Find out where he came from, what he wants to do. I want to know where he trained, what his grades are like, who his family is, and how close he is to them. She cast a... Huh? We just know she's an adult. Because she would have had to be 17 in order to apply, and she's implied to be older than, she's not in her first year, basically, of Beacon, so she would be at least 18. But it's been guesstimated she's more like 25. I don't think it's... It's just info. She cast a glance over at her two subordinates, still waiting obediently at the far end of the room. You may be getting a new friend. The JPEGs! You know the funny thing about the JPEGs is that they're not even the designs that ended up being animated for Volume 2. Like, Mercury has pink hair. Yeah. As soon as he stepped off the bullhead back at Beacon, his uncle wrapped him up in a tight embrace. Zuko! I thought you were done getting yourself into trouble. He smiled as he returned the hug. Never, Uncle. You should know better than that. Behind his uncle, Rwby locked eyes with Zuko and gave him an understanding nod. The rest of his team turned to give him some privacy, even as the uncle and nephew walked slowly behind them. Zuko's smile quickly dropped into a frown as his thoughts returned in full force. Uncle, something happened. Iroh turned serious, dropping the one-arm hug they'd been walking with. He dropped his voice into a whisper as they slowed down, making sure to keep themselves a good distance from eavesdroppers. What is it, Prince Zuko? It was fucking sick as fuck! I have an aura. His uncle was stunned silent for several moments, struggling to process what he'd been told. But how? I don't know. Honestly, yeah, but I also feel like Iroh is also like, I'm so glad you're not dead. And that drip! And that drip! Can you get me that drip? I don't know, but during the fight, I got shot. Iroh's fatherly instincts quickly clicked in as he began to check the boy over for wounds. Zuko took a brief moment to relish the feeling before he assured him. It's okay, Uncle, I'm fine. Somehow I wasn't hurt by it. The only explanation I can think of is that I was protected by an aura. Are you sure? It fits with what I've learned about it. It's supposed to protect you from harm, and I didn't have any armor. Iroh was deep in thought, his hands stroking through his long gray beard in contemplation. Unfortunately, I am still not very familiar with the gifts of this world. Perhaps, however, whatever brought you here gave you that power, too. Zuko's eyes narrowed English! Zuko's eyes narrowed briefly, yeah, and he fought back the urge to correct him that they'd been kidnapped. Instead, he calmed himself with a breath and waited for his uncle to continue. I will have to pray tonight. Maybe I will find an answer. He looked at him with disbelief. Uncle, Agni can't help us here. You know that. Maybe. But I can hope. You... whatever. There's something else, too. I lightning bend. For a moment, Zuko couldn't tell just what expression Iroh had on his face. However, the tight hug that Iroh gave him yet again certainly didn't seem angry. Oh, Zuko, I am so proud of you! You've let go of your shame and no longer does doubt clear your mind. Zuko looked away awkwardly, a slight grimace marring his face. I didn't exactly have a choice. I kinda had to accept where I am. There's no more going back. Iroh clapped him reassuringly on the back, a sad smile growing on him. It is a start, nephew. And what may help even more would be to tell those young ladies the truth. What, Uncle? You know I can't. They deserve to know, Prince Zuko. At least some of it. He didn't look convinced, and his grimace grew into a complete frown. That was on the author. That was a grammar mistake right there. Yeah. I haven't been like you know, writing fan fiction. There's like a lot of errors, but usually they aren't an issue. That was the first one that tripped me up. They should know who you are. How you came here and where you came from. That is not so important. Zuko's mind was still a whirl as he walked through the door and back into Team Ruby's dorm. The others chatted casually as they headed for their beds, content to simply sleep after a long day. Unfortunately, Zuko knew he had to do it as soon as possible. I lied. They stopped, glancing at him in confusion. Rwby was the first to ask what they were all thinking. You lied? About what? Well, not lied, necessarily, just left some things out. They continued to look at him curiously, and he took a deep breath. Mentally, he prepared himself. he, pre- he prepared himself to spit out the truth, or at least a version of it. I came from somewhere really far from here, and my name isn't exactly Zuko Lee. A part of him was already regretting saying anything as their confused eyes wandered over him. Nevertheless, he had already started, and so he gave them a proper Fire Nation bow, his hands easily morphing into the flames of his homeland. My name is Zuko, son of Ursa and Fire Lord Ozai, Prince of the Fire Nation and heir to the throne. Let's go! That boy! Except, remember who you are! Yeah. Iroh sighed as he slid his key into the door of his room. It had been a long day indeed for the former general. An extended day in the kitchen thanks to an illness keeping them understaffed, and then with Zuko's little escapades at the docks. And here I thought we left the excitement behind. He chuckled to himself, accepting that some things would just never change. He palmed the scroll that Zuko had brought, a frown coming to his face as he wondered where exactly his nephew had gotten the money for it. No, some things weren't changing, even if they should. I know he robbed a guy. I know he robbed a guy. There was a knock at the door, which surprised the old general, given the late time of day. What surprised him even more was who was standing at his door. Professor Ozpin, how may I help you? The green hair... The gray-haired man smiled whimsically. I know, that was me. Before raising his empty mug with a glint in his eyes. I know it's rather late, but I was hoping for some of that delicious jasmine tea you make. Iroh didn't believe him for a moment, and Ozpin wasn't so foolish to think he did. But it was at least a polite way of asking to come inside to speak, and no doubt partly true at least. He drank his own tea so much for a reason, after all. Of course, Professor. He stepped inside and let him in. I'm running a bit short on my jasmine supply, I'm afraid. However, I found some good ginseng recently. Would you like to try that instead? Hooking me up with the good shit. I know you keep the good shit. Where's the good shit? Do you think the world of Remnant does have, like, an equivalent? No, wait. Speaking of that, I read a fanfic that answered this question a long time ago. No, it does belong in the same sentence because their explanation for like how people get high is basically smoking the resin left after dust is used. Yeah. I thought it was a really interesting idea and like that they like refine it to be like something like more used like in the black market. I thought it was really interesting. No, you gotta go and dance. Oh, anyways. Yes, please. I'm sure that any tea you make would be delicious. Iroh chuckled good-naturedly and moved over to his brand new kettle, a courtesy present from the kitchen staff. He heated the water in for but a moment thanks to his firebending, and mentally prepared himself for the conversation to come. I was very surprised when Zuko told me he had discovered his aura. To his immediate credit, Iroh almost didn't catch the wince in Ozpin's eyes as he passed him a drink. Iroh wasn't so mature that he didn't take pride in the skills he'd garnered over years and experience, only feeling sadness of why he'd so foolishly used them for what he was younger. He was very lucky he discovered it in time. He shouldn't have placed himself in that situation without knowing he had it first. Ozpin paused as he raised the cup to his lips, acutely aware of the scalding heat which had begun to radiate from the tea before him. I don't suppose there's a way he could have been assured of his aura's presence. Ozpin set a cup on the side, taking a brief moment to prepare his words before he spoke to the elderly gentleman. The elderly gentleman, whose tenseness was broadcasting an assured danger should Ozpin fail to explain himself. Had he asked, I would have gladly unlocked his aura for him. Despite my efforts, I do know Zuko well enough that he would not ask unless he had no other options, as do you. Clearly, Iroh wasn't happy with the danger his nephew had found himself in, especially if it could have been reduced. Ozpin sighed in resignation, oddly feeling like a naughty child before his superior. He's being scolded by Iroh. Yeah. He's gonna wait for like the right time. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that he would find himself in such a situation. Had I known that, I would have not tried to teach him a lesson. Iroh looked ready to scold him before the professor continued to try and defend himself. But you must remember, Iroh, that this is a combat school. Zuko has entered this school to train himself to become a huntsman. Danger will come. Iroh did understand that. Truly he did. It didn't calm him much when his nephew had been in danger. It was one of the few areas he struggled with in his infamous patience. I've done my own research into your aura, and there is still one more thing you can do to help protect him. Ozpin nodded, pleased that Iroh had at the very least somewhat accepted his apology. He valued Iroh and Zuko too. It was a shame that such a situation had occurred. He stepped over and placed his hand on the firebender's chest. For it is in passing that we achieve immortality. Through this we become a paragon of virtue and glory to rise above all. Infinite in distance and unbound by death, I release your soul, and by my shoulder protect thee. Iroh was basically like, you better unlock my aura, bitch. And that was chapter 13, and I can do one more chapter. No, we're still going. There's one more chapter, and then I'll be done for the day. And then we'll have 4 more. Okay, I can do that. So thoughts on this session? Yep. We are going into volume 2. Which I'll tell you right now is really rare for fics. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Any other thoughts? Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. He didn't get the love he deserved. We never hear his name. It's kind of funny. It's very funny to me. Sit in the corner, monkey. This isn't about you. This isn't about you, son. Yeah. The Leaves from the Vine chapter always gets me. Forever Fall. Yeah. I yeah. It's just it hurts. What I always think about with a fan fiction is unlike something like a show or whatever, you're going through one person's vision, like you're not going through like multiple people trying to make a bigger story. So that's why I tend to be like much more forgiving with stuff that irks me. Because like if I'm comparing it to direct fiction, like there would have been like a bunch of pans on it that like try to like lean it. But what you're essentially reading with fan fiction is a first draft. Really nothing that you've brought up. I understand that completely because I do agree. I think it would have been a lot cooler if, like, maybe he got shot with an electricity beam and he redirected it like it was lightning. I think that would have been cooler. It happens, it happened. Blah. He learns the lightning bending thing after Iroh's injury. Yeah. He never lightning bends. I believe he does in the comics, though. Yeah. Right. Right. It was like a civil war. Like I said, I could be wrong, but I do agree with you. Like, they could have done the lightning bending differently, but I do understand why they chose it. My personal theory, though, is that it's not lightning bending and that it's a semblance, which still is kind of awkward, but yeah, that's fair too. I kind of don't want him to get a semblance. Yeah, when you mentioned Glass Cannon, I remembered another Zuko centered fic that I read a long time ago, where he does that. Probably too much. Anyways, it was a Sword Art Online Avatar fan fiction. Shockingly, it was very well written because they basically said, fuck Kirito, Kirito dies first chapter. But, it's very funny. And it's not like Zuko taking over Kirito's role, it's Zuko doing his own thing just in this world. And Zuko is a glass cannon in there because he doesn't really understand the stat thing. So he only puts his stats to attack, pretty much. So basically he has like no defense. So like when you said glass cannon, I was reminded of that fic. Like they and like he gets called out on. They're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, bro?" And he's like, "I didn't know what the other ones meant." So I did think that was funny. I went neuron activate, and like that's what he puts like all It was cute. He ends up making friends with like an NPC, and he like puts all of his like, because he also doesn't know how to use like the buffs or anything, so he puts all of his buffs into helping this one NPC like along their quest line. Because he's just like, oh, okay, you want to move to a bigger city? Okay, we'll give you more stuff so you can move to a bigger city. It's cute. It's cute. Honestly, what's it called? That fic discussed a lot of things that I always wondered about Sword Art Online, like the fact that there were probably little kids who would have gotten involved in that game. Yeah, and there was like little kids, like they had like basically a village on level 1 of the tower, where basically they just had collected like all of the youngest people who had gotten stuck, and like they just take care of them. Spy kids! It's trying to offer you more crossovers. Yep, we have seen children. No, but like it was like yeah, I know that they have seen children in Sword Art Online. But I did think it was interesting. Like one of them was like a family that was like the grandparents who wanted to bond with their grandchild. So you have like these two old people like in the game and they're just basically babysitting all the kids. Sword Art Online could have been really good, but it wasn't. Yeah, I've heard that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I like the first few episodes of Sword Art Online. I really do. Yeah. And then the fucking harem. And not to mention the fucking fairies that really just drags the whole series down. Yeah, it's a shame. But no, also I wanted to bring up a question for how we're going to do this series. I wanted to bring up a question to you. I think it would be kind of fun if whenever we finish a story and move on to the other one, we use one of the ones we just used. So for example, the next fic I can offer you will be ones that are either Ruby or Avatar related. And then we go from there and like just keep doing that. Oh, I just meant like kind of in general. I'm definitely gonna drop a poll because I think that because if we were to just do just branching off from Avatar and Ruby, I have a lot of good ones. Like I would definitely suggest the Ruby Avatar one. Not Ruby Avatar, excuse me. The Avatar Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer. Avatar Demon Slayer because it's Rengoku and I know you love Rengoku. Sounds good actually. I like that idea. Because oh my god, I have a lot of fiction and I just cleared out my Ruby fan fiction again. Because I do that every so often. Oh, you want to know a fun fact? What series do you think have the most fan fictions written about them? We actually have stats on this, by the way. Fan fictions, crossovers in general. What do you think is the series at the very top? You were right the first time. It's Naruto. Yeah. But like the most fan fiction series is Naruto. Yeah. And I'm working on learning Naruto. But yeah, it's Naruto. You like some shows you think would be high up on that list are not. Like you don't get to Pokemon for a while, you don't get to Harry Potter for a while. Ruby is like the second or third. So semblances in Ruby are based off of a flaw. What is it? Jesus Christmas Christ. I mean, that's fair. But like if you look at it like Yang's is her anger issues, Ruby was forced to grow up too fast, Blake runs away, Weiss is tied to her family. And then you have like Pyrrha, she pushes and pulls people. Like she draws people to her, but because of that she pushes people. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, she has magnetism. But no, that's what how semblances work in Ruby. They are a negative trait of yours that kind of gets manifested as a power. So like I always figured that mine would be something like a high jump, like the ability to jump really high and land really easily, but like cuz I jump to conclusions. But I'm tist. Yeah. My other thing would be your pride, honestly. No, the other one I was thinking for me would be like because of my health and everything and always being grumpy. The other thing would be like it'd make me a berserker. Like I'd have a period of time where I'd be able to like kind of like just completely push through a bunch of issues, like and take a million hits, and that as soon as that goes, my aura drops and I'm screwed. Exact like very there is a character in Ruby with this semblance. That's why I didn't say it. But like for like 60 seconds in vulnerability. Well, that's kind of funny. Holy shit. That sounds about right. But yeah, that's what I figured my semblance would be like. Make me a berserker because I also think it would be funny to make me of all people a berserker. Like my little fragile. Like in our One Piece stuff, we say like I'd have like I would be like a kicker like Sanji. I also have thick ass thighs. My thighs so thick I could kill a man. Okay, let's end this before we get any more insane. Bitch. All right, well, you know, if you want to keep the party going, you know where to go. I, on the other hand, I'm gonna pass the fuck out. Bye bye. Later, Gators. Have a good day. And I hope to do this again Friday, assuming I don't die, or if we